Hello, welcome to Inside the Birds Pre-Game Live, presented, of course, by Ocean Casino Resort in Atlantic City. What an exciting night, everybody. By the way, that's the exclusive Jersey Shore resort of Inside the Birds. And what an exciting night it is. We've got the return of the Kelly Greens to the Philadelphia fan base. I know everybody's excited. Guess what? We got the return of Inside the Birds Pre-Game Live to Philadelphia. We are here at Fringe Bar, 140 North Columbus Ave, right on the Delaware River waterfront. You can see it behind us. You got a beautiful fire pit outside. We got people in here at the bars ready to watch the games, getting ready for tonight's game. And plus this, there's a theater here, folks, with 250 seats of stadium seating to watch the game tonight, Eagles versus Dolphins on the big screen. We can't wait to break it all down. Of course, I'm Geoff Mosher from Inside the Birds with my co-host Adam Caplan. We've got the usual suspects in the house tonight, our tape breakdown guru Greg Cosell, and our Michigan man, former Eagles wide receiver, a man who never wore the Kelly Green, so he's probably a little bit jealous tonight, but Jason Avant.
Yeah, I've wore it once. It was with white pants. It wasn't great.
That didn't count.
Yeah. It didn't go well. But it'll go well tonight.
Who'd you guys play that game?
The Packers.
Oh.
That's when we lost to the Packers twice. Once in the regular season, once in the playoffs.
Yeah, well, they're going to rewrite some history tonight. I know a lot of people are excited about the return of the Kelly Green jerseys. And
well, the only Kelly Green Caplan wore was about 30 years ago in a leisure suit.
A leisure suit? Hey, a leisure suit?
Pictures?
Never.
Pictures or it didn't
Absolutely
happen.
never. Absolutely never.
Pictures or it didn't
I'm
happen.
proud to say I've never worn one.
I believe Greg. But anyway.
That's a Morty Seinfeld suit.
Well, the Eagles are coming off their first loss. Obviously, it was a rough game for them against the New Jersey Jets. They're looking to get back on track tonight in front of the home crowd against the high-flying Miami Dolphins squad that's stealing all the headlines for their amazing offense. They are scoring a lot of points. So we look forward to breaking it down. Again, we are here at Fringe Bar on the Delaware waterfront, 140 North Columbus Ave. We got people watching the show. They're hyped, as me and Adam said in the podcast. If you come down, watch the show, and there's still 2 hours left, you say, hey, I'm here to see Inside the Birds Pregame Live, we're going to buy you a drink. So it's not too late to get in the car, the train, Uber, whatever it takes to get down. Fringe Bar here on 140 North Columbus Ave. It's a great spot. We're going to tell you more about Fringe Bar a little later in the show. Jason, I want to start with you. The Eagles lose their first game of the year. It was very ugly against the Jets, obviously. There were some reminders of last year against Washington with all the turnovers, right? I think four turnovers in that game. Same thing last week against the Jets. I want to know the players' viewpoint coming off a loss like that. You flush it away in 24 hours? Does it sting? What's the atmosphere? What's the environment like after a loss like that?
Definitely frustrating for any player, especially when you're more talented, better players, better coaches, I believe, and you just refuse to play the style of game that it calls for in order to win. That's what I believe happened last week against the Jets. So I know as a player, very frustrated, but again, it's Red October. The city's going to be behind, adds fuel to the fire. This team has always historically played better and better as underdogs. Now they're being chased. But to be back in that position where people are doubting, media heads, us sometimes, whatever it may be, whatever they can concoct in their mind in order to gain the advantage, I don't care. I think they'll do it tonight.
Well, how about that? We got two competing color scheme themes going on, right? Red October, the Phillies, and the Kelly Greens for the first time in franchise since 1995 that we'll really see those Kelly Greens, the helmet, the jerseys come out. Adam, this is obviously not an X's and O's thing, but sure. I do want to spend a minute on it from your standpoint, someone who grew up in this area and just knows how much the fans have wanted a moment like this.
I'd have to, in terms of you talk about the jerseys?
Yeah, just that
growing up here, I'm trying to think of a jersey that Flyers, Sixers, Phillies, Eagles that they were more into than these Kelly Greens. In fact, I'm doing television this morning on Sports Grid, and they're out of New York. They asked me about it. They're not from this market, and they wanted to know what it's like. Why is there such a frenzy? It's different color. It's different. It brings us back to our youth. People who are probably late 30s, early 40s. When they were little kids, they do remember the Kelly Greens.
Right.
Remember with Jaws and Quick.
Sure.
and just everything that represented to our youth. So yeah, it's pretty cool. It's really amazing. And I remember being at that press conference with Jeffrey Lurie at the owners' meetings at Phoenix maybe 4 or 5 years ago. And he said he explained it because he was aware of the frenzy for it. He goes, guys, we have to apply for it a year in advance. And you just can't decide you're going to do it right now. He goes, no, we get it. We're going to get this done. And he did.
Yeah, and you guys know this. And I'll say this no matter how late the calendar gets, 2021, 2031, 2041. Philadelphia, to me, has always been a town that wants to memorialize its defense more than its offense. It's all about Buddy and Reggie and Seth and Jerome. And I've always said, if the Eagles ever built a team like the Legion of Boom Seahawks and won the Super Bowl that way, there would be 11 different statues of each defensive starter all around the stadium. Greg, you know how important defense is in this city, and running the ball like in the 80s, because we hear it after every loss.
Yeah, but I think that's changed. What I'm saying, I think
around the league,
the organization is concerned. It might not have changed as far as the fan base is concerned.
No,
but it certainly changed as far as the organization's concerned.
Right. That's always the sort of the organizational mentality versus what the fans want. Because Jay, after every loss, you remember hearing it. Andy didn't run the ball enough. Andy didn't. They want Wilbur left and Wilbur right.
Yeah, that's the nature of the beast. Remember, hindsight is always 20/20.
Right.
Yeah,
it's always 20/20. But you don't want to go into the next week knowing that you could have run the ball. They didn't stop us, and that's what the fan is saying. Like, let a team stop you.
Right.
Run it more than 25 times, and let's see the results.
All right, listen, this is going to be a great game tonight. We've got so much intel, so much breakdown. In fact, I heard Greg on with Clay Harbor on Inside the Tape on Inside the Birds earlier this week saying you could probably spend 2 hours just breaking down maybe 2 or 3 key matchups of this game alone, and we're going to try to break it all down over the next 2 hours here at Fringe Bar on 140 North Columbus Ave. It's an awesome place, and by the way, there's a great smell when you walk in here. You got the fire pit burning outside. You have awesome food cooking. It's classic bar pub, but it's also got this soulful food feel to it. Tostones, jerk chicken wings, a Caribbean flavor, and you can just smell it when you walk in here. It's a wonderful place, and of course we've got Lane Johnson at the bar right here. Not the actual Lane Johnson, but somebody wearing his jersey, thankfully. And a lot of Eagles fans are pouring in and getting excited about this game. If you're excited and you want to ask us a question, please do it. And you're watching on YouTube, you can leave a question in the chat box. You can leave your score prediction. I promise this time I've got the document up. I will read your score prediction. We will read your questions. If you have it, just ask. And please, if you're watching on YouTube, hit that subscribe button for us. We really, really appreciate it. All right, we're going to take a big picture view of this monumental game tonight between 2 5-1 teams, Philadelphia Eagles and the Miami Dolphins. We will get into the X's and O's, but as always, we start with a big picture look. So, Jason, I'm going to start with you as the person who's played and knows the firsthand feeling about this. I've always felt that the Dolphins enjoy a home field advantage in September and October because it's still very hot and humid. You see teams go down to Miami, it's still 95, still could be 100, and they wear down. Miami's already had a bunch of home games. They've scored a lot of points in them. You've noticed that they've traveled north, though, New England, Buffalo, not necessarily the same as far as what their offense has been able to do. You come into the Link, might be in the upper 40s tonight. Do you think that makes a difference for them coming here, the weather, the environment?
The environment makes a difference. The weather is still not cold enough to dictate a game plan. Like when you start getting into the 20s and the 30s, now guys start making business decisions and working the weather. But I would say going up north with Buffalo and New England, that's just division. Division opponents play each other tough.
Differently, yeah.
That's a good point too.
So that's what you saw with that. But coming up here won't be an advantage as far as the weather is concerned. Now, as far as our fan base is concerned, that's definitely an advantage, especially with how hype the city's been and how crazy they're going to be tonight. That will definitely be an advantage for the Eagles tonight.
Sure. Greg, let me ask you this. From a schematic standpoint, the Eagles played the Rams a couple weeks ago. So they were preparing for a team that does a lot of motion, right? Sean Desai last year was with Seattle. So he's seen the Rams offense twice last year, and then he saw the 49ers offense twice last year, and some of these Eagles did as well. So from an understanding of motion and concept standpoint, should the Eagles have a pretty good idea, not just of what Miami does, but theoretically on motion, misdirection, things of that scheme?
There'd be a yes and no answer to that.
There always is.
Yeah. I think there's a lot of variables there. Motion and the deployment of it is different with both teams.
Okay.
Now, obviously, the Rams use a good amount of motion. Miami uses it differently. I would argue more effectively.
Okay.
And they bring a speed element to the use of motion that the Rams do not bring. And that changes things.
Mm-hmm.
So if you're just talking about dealing with motion as a general principle, yes, you have tactics that you want to deal with motion, that you want to deploy.
Right.
But I think the motion that the Dolphins bring is different both in terms of how they do it and the players who are doing it.
All right, and we'll break that part down as we go on.
That question was kind of early. So I'm ready.
You would agree,
I'm
would
ready.
you?
Yeah, 100%. I'm ready.
He did a great job of just giving a peripheral viewpoint.
I didn't want to go into the details yet because I don't think
I'm ready for it. I was like, oh, there we go. We're ready to go.
Adam, the Eagles have not lost back-to-back games. This is hard to believe. They have not lost back-to-back games started by Jalen Hurts since almost 2 years to the date, right? Remember that Raiders game where they started to run the ball, and then the Bucs game where they got humiliated on prime time. And ever since then, no losses in back-to-back games with Jalen Hurts. What is the number one reason for that in your mind?
I think there's a way that Nick Sirianni, you start with him, the head coach, he has a great way of getting to the heart of the issue. Whatever corrections need to be made Monday morning, and then they move on to the next subject, which is the next opponent. They just do a great job of corrections. I like the adjustments they seem to make as they go forward, and sometimes it's small lineup changes. And with all the injuries they've had so far, they're still 5-1. Yeah. As disappointing as that game was last week, they're still 5-1. And look, we'll get into their injury issues, which are pretty vast and complex. It's a little different than we've seen in the last 2 or 3 years, but they do a great job, no matter who's on a staff, of making corrections, getting guys to buy in. That's the other thing, as Jason could to attest to, being a former player, is the buy-in from the players. That's really important, that they respect their staff, and they certainly do.
It certainly seems that way, the way they bounce back after losses. We will see again tonight. This is a pretty big challenge. Obviously, that was a great segue because the Eagles remain without some of their most important players. They've been without him all year. They're going to continue to be without Avante Maddox. He's been sidelined with the torn pec. We don't even know if he'll be back at all this year. That has had a widespread impact on their nickel corner situation. They are now without right guard Cam Jurgens for Game 3 of at least 4 games, as he is on IR with the foot sprain. Safety Justin Evans and wide receiver Quez Watkins both went on IR before the Jets game, so this would be game number 2 of at least 4 for them that they will be out. That's just IR. Also out for this game is another safety, Reed Blankenship, a starting safety. He's out after taking that blindside hit last Sunday against the Jets with the ribs injury. And of course, the nickel corner that they had signed to replace Avante Maddox, Bradley Roby, is also out. So they are very thin at the nickel back spot yet again. This means that newcomer Josiah Scott, who was with the team last year, and they just signed off the Steelers practice squad, is going to be on the active roster tonight, and no doubt will be playing. And also, we'll see Sua Opeta continue to play right guard in place of Cam Jurgens. Olamide Zaccheaus, we assume, will be the slot wide receiver, although they did make a move there that we'll discuss. And I would assume that without any other choices, the Eagles have to start tonight at safety, Terrell Edmunds and Sidney Brown, the rookie, because who else do they have?
Mekhi Gardner, that's it, who just got elevated off the practice squad again. That's a position they've got to do something.
Yeah. That's
one at the trade deadline. That's got to be their number one goal, is to get another safety in here, someone who could plug and play. I understand systems are different, but they need someone who's done it, been there and done it before. Because let's not forget, Terrell Edmunds was benched. Okay, now he's starting because they don't have anybody else.
Yeah.
And we don't know how serious this ribs injury is, but Blankenship didn't even practice this week. And Mekhi Gardner did have snaps in college at safety, but now you're asking him to potentially be their third safety for the time being. And then Sidney Brown missed 3 games due to a hamstring problem. So this is not good, this safety
Who's the
position.
slot corner tonight?
Well, you have to think Josiah Scott will be the slot corner. They just signed him off the Steelers practice squad. That's the position he played for the Eagles last year. But Eli Ricks has also worked at slot corner. Go ahead.
By the way, Josiah Scott had a hamstring issue with the Steelers. He was on their practice squad injury list, but he's healthy now.
Right.
But to ask him to play slot corner right now against this team?
Right. We know from Andrew DeCecco's reporting on insidethebirds.com that Eli Ricks has also been working extensively at the slot and has said he expects to see action. So maybe you will see situational slot defenders, which is not what any team wants to do, but what the Eagles have to do. But Greg, I want to go back to safety here with both of you guys. I like what I've seen from Sidney Brown, but the book on him is very aggressive, can miss tackles, can over pursue, and I almost think this is the last type of team that you would want a rookie, I mean, as a rookie to begin with, but that kind of player in, because you miss a tackle against this team, 10 yards can become 50 yards, 60 yards. So this seems like a tough spot for the rookie.
Well, as Jay kind of indicated, there's so much that goes into this besides just Sidney Brown. Okay?
Right.
Sidney Brown has no experience whatsoever dealing with anything that he's going to be looking at tonight. Now, again, that doesn't automatically mean he's going to play poorly or the Eagles are going to lose. Mm-hmm. But when you look at this game and you see Sidney Brown and where he played in college, which was predominantly in the box, yes, he can run fast in a straight line, but he's not a loose athlete. He's a straight line athlete, and he's never seen this kind of motion. He's, one of the things, I'm probably a little all over the place here because there's a lot to delve into, but I've watched this offense in detail, and I've made it a point to talk to a bunch of coaches just to get different points of view. And one of the things I kept hearing from coaches is that your safeties have to really be able to see things exactly the same way and communicate without communicating. Mm-hmm. And that's why certain teams, like the Bills, for instance, who have veteran safeties, can play them well, or a Belichick can play them better because they've seen them over the years. Now you have Sidney Brown and Terrell Edmonds, and Terrell Edmonds is really a box linebacker if you really want to get into what his traits are. Sure. So now you have these two guys who are essentially both box linebackers having to play safety against this team and never having played together. So again, I'm not predicting a score. Who knows what's going to happen? Right. You don't know till the game's played. But it's just a tough situation to be in.
100%.
And they know the Dolphins know this.
You're being kind. Way back.
Right.
Way back.
Chris Mara goes back like 30 yards back. Remember that?
Well, we'll get into the weeds. We'll get into the weeds more. I'll follow you guys. There's a lot of weeds to get into here.
Yeah, I can hear Merrill now. Sidney Brown back in Coatesville at this moment. I mean, they're going to play their safeties way, way back. All right, there is good news on the injury front, though, right? We've got right tackle Lane Johnson, who we didn't know if he was going to be able to play in this game at this time last week. He's good to go. He's going to battle through. He had the ankle issue. Cornerback Darius Slay missed the Jets game. He's back and expected to play. Also, rookie defensive tackle Jalen Carter. His presence was missed last week. He will be back and able to play. So two key components of the defense right there with Slay and Jalen Carter. So when you see full throttle at him for the defensive line and corners, it's sort of, you can take a break from the safety issue and say, well, hey, at least we've got, our front four, which tends to suffocate teams. Yeah,
and the big thing is getting Slay back, because that's another thing. Josh Jobe's been a great story, but you want to get Slay out there because he's actually fast. He can run, even though he's older, in his 30s. And, this is where the Eagles having the oldest cornerback tandem of the National Football League could come into play tonight. Yes, Slay does run well for his age, but Bradbury does not quite as Slay can.
Yeah.
And they know this. It's not a secret. And there's a reason why teams don't do this, go with older corners.
Right.
And this is another situation. You got the issues at safety, the two older corners.
I just want to say this, is that I've seen a lot of guys in my years pack in the mail in a game like this, especially when they had injuries. Darius Slay coming back in this game, on this stage, with the lack of help behind him, says a lot about the person that he is. Some very good players in this game versus Tyreek Hill.
Yep.
And Jalen Waddle, without the supporting cast back there, and they had an injury, may prolong that injury another game.
Right.
Hey, that's a great.
I'm just saying. I'm telling you.
Okay.
So for Darius Slay to elect to say, you know what, I'm going to come out and I want to play against the best, it just says a lot. He's a competitor, and I love to see that.
Yeah, absolutely. It's funny you bring that up because we were at the joint practice between the Eagles and the Dolphins last year, and literally from the first snap. Now I get it; it's one-on-ones, but Tyreek Hill was eating Darius Slay's lunch, right? And Slay actually left that day with an injury, and we were like, "Oh man, you just got taken by Tyreek Hill. Now you're limping off the field." But to your point, I agree. This is when it counts, and he is back on the field, and the Eagles absolutely need him, and they need him and James Bradbury to play better than they have so far this year. We will get into that. Last elevation, we mentioned Mekhi Garner to play some cornerback/safety. The Eagles elevated Julio Jones to the active roster tonight, as if there weren't enough Alabama on the field.
No, they didn't call me.
Call you?
I wouldn't answer.
Okay.
I'm too old.
You're too old? It can't be that much older.
Julio's only like 3 years younger than me.
I was going to say, it can't be that much difference.
Wow.
No, I don't know.
Julio's caught up.
Oh, man, that is really funny. All right, so that's it. And then there was a practice squad movement this week that was interesting with the addition of...
Kindle Bildor.
Yes.
He's not a horror movie actor. It's actually his quarterback. Yeah, so one of my favorite all-time
played a lot of
names.
snaps in the
Yeah, well, he
NFL,
actually, here's the crazy thing. He was actually the starting nickel corner like a season and a half, 2 seasons for the Bears.
Yeah.
They brought in, obviously, a new scheme, new coaching staff, so he was out of a job. But Sean Desai coached him.
Right.
So he knows him. So here's yet maybe the 5th or 6th nickel guy they're trying. He's on their practice squad. And they'll see he could be their nickel later in the season. Who knows with all the problems they're having there?
Sure.
But they know him. Again, this is a guy that could play it. He's done it before. And boy, if he can make it and actually help them, that would help alleviate this issue because I think it's like 5 or 6 guys they've tried. And Andrew DeCecco, who writes for insidethebirds.com, I guess in his diary with Ricks, he did say although he's a little tall to play slot corner.
He hasn't really played slot corner.
Yeah.
I mean, he has a couple of snaps with the Eagles this year.
Yes.
But prior, he's not been a
That
slot
would worry
corner.
me. That would worry me.
This is out of necessity
He was
more
there in
than
the Rams.
desire.
He was there with the Rams.
Yeah.
And here's the thing about, like, when you have big guys, you can bring in big guys off the street. Skill position, Julio being at home, Bradley Roby being at home. These guys have to run at full speed.
Yes.
Usually guys come up, off the street and skill positions, they get hurt pretty quickly just because there's so much stress or so intense on your body. So, it's not the best situation off the street.
No, definitely not. Now, the Miami Dolphins are beat up a little bit, too. Not as much as the Eagles, but obviously they're without their left tackle, Teron Armstead, who has been on injured reserve with a knee injury. And, of course, their electrifying rookie running back, Devin Achane, who is averaging 12.1 yards per carry, which is, I have a hard time reconciling how amazing that is, even on limited carries. He is also on IR with the knee injury, so he is out, along with Teron Armstead. Now, they did get a running back for the game. Jeff Wilson had been on IR. He was activated into the 21-day window. He has now been put on the active roster,
Yes,
and he will
tonight.
play tonight.
He'll play tonight.
All right, so that's a good thing for them. Not so good yet. Jalen Ramsey remains out. He had the meniscus tear surgery, right?
Yes, he actually had it repaired, and it's usually 3 or 4 months at a minimum. Now, he started working this week, and they said he looked good, so he may be coming back very, very soon.
Right. There were some question marks whether their best cornerback, Xavier Howard, was going to be able to play. It sounds like he will be able to play. And what we're trying to figure out is Connor Williams, their center, who has been sidelined at times this year with a groin injury. He was questionable going into the game. Is he expected to play? Or are they
He's a true game day decision.
Yeah,
and
that's what I
Liam
thought.
Eichenberg's a second-round pick a couple years ago?
Yeah.
Yep. He started for him. But Kendall Lamb is a guy, man, who's filling in. This is, each week we always identify someone who the Eagles could go get, their D-line versus the opponent's offensive line. That's a guy who's a journeyman and who's been with 5 teams, a former undrafted free agent with the Texans many years ago. That's a guy that I think they could exploit.
All right, well, we will see. Let's get into the matchups. Obviously, a big game tonight here at the Link. The crowd's going to be rocking. We're having a great time here at Fringe Bar on 140 North Columbus Ave. People are filing in. People are getting drinks. We got football on TV. Everybody's getting ready. Everybody's very excited. You can see the wonderful atmosphere behind me, I believe. The fire pits, which I'm sure where people around around them, warming their hands, getting ready for the big game. Now, in case you haven't noticed, or you've been living in Iraq, or maybe you've had too many drinks here at Fringe Bar, but the Miami Dolphins, they tend to score a lot of points. They lead the NFL with 223 points scored so far. That's an average of 37.2 points per game, and that makes them the 5th highest scoring team through 6 weeks in NFL history, eclipsed only by, we've got the 2013 Denver Broncos, 2000 greatest show on turf St. Louis Rams, the 2009 Super Bowl champion Saints, and of course that Tom Brady, Wilker Moss team of the New England Patriots from 2007. Miami dropped a 70 burger on the Denver Broncos earlier this year. That is the most points scored in an NFL game. I went back page by page through the history books. You know, that's a lot of pages. Couldn't find anybody who's ever scored 70 points. So
Somebody did.
Somebody did?
Yeah.
Who? Besides Miami?
I mean, going back a long time, somebody won 73-0 in it.
Oh, okay.
Was it an exhibition or was it a real
in
game?
the 1940s.
Greg was at the game.
Good one. He said it so he know it. By the way,
I knew that was coming, right?
By the way, they won by 50 over the Broncos. It's
Yes,
incredible.
they won by 50 and they scored 70 points. That's weird because it said
I believe it was the Chicago Bears in the 40s.
I was thinking about that, 73-0.
the last team to even score more than that was the Falcons, scoring 62 in 1973. So that was the official last time. But I believe you, Greg, because you are an NFL historian. So let's talk about Miami's high-flying offense. It's obviously built on speed and on scheme. So, Greg, why don't you explain what they do best?
Well, there's a lot here, so we have to kind of walk through it, and I don't want to be the only one who does it. Yeah.
I've taken those sounds too, so I'll piggyback off.
Nice.
Okay.
So if you look
Schematically,
if
yeah.
you look at it in a very general sense,
Yes.
okay, what they do is their run game works to the perimeter and their pass game works between the numbers. That would be sort of the Cliff or Spark Notes version of their offense. Okay, everything is quick rhythm in the pass game. There's a really fascinating stat, and not that this is just a reflection of their offense. Tua has been sacked 6 times all year and 4 times in one game. So in the other 5 games, he's been sacked twice. He's been only sacked 1 time on 3rd down. So everything is rhythmic based, okay? In studying their offense, and I even had this conversation with a coach who's played against them, they say that you have to deal with their offense from an inverse perspective. In other words, it's coverage first, then pass rush, not pass rush first, then coverage, because you're not going to get there. So what you have to do is find a way to take away first window throws.
Okay.
And if you take away first window throws, then you have to get there with your 4-man pass rush.
Sure.
Because the other thing that's been very clear is you can't play very often at all single high safety because you can't cover the speed on the perimeter. And the Eagles can't either.
Right.
Bradbury certainly can't. We all like Slay, but he can't run with Tyreek Hill either.
Right.
So you end up playing a lot of split safety.
Or Jalen Waddle.
Or Jalen Waddle, correct. Right, or Jalen Waddle. So you end up playing a lot of split safety, so you have to take away the first window throws, and then your 4-man pass rush becomes a factor. This is not about pressure first, it's about coverage first.
Okay.
That would be general principle.
Sure. So playing off that, Jason, I would ask you then, if you look at Miami's offense, clearly they have 2 great receivers. Eagles have 2 great receivers. A couple other teams might have 2 good
they're different.
receivers. I get that. You might look at their offensive line and say there are other teams with better offensive line. There's other teams with better quarterback. So why are the Dolphins scoring an absurdly number of higher points than any other good offensive team in the league?
Well, their quarterback is completing 71% of his passes. That's number one. And their offensive coordinator / head coach is doing things that people haven't seen in a long time and using things in a way that they haven't seen, right? Z away motion was in the back of the playbook. Away motion is basically when a guy goes in motion away from the formation.
Sort of almost that short burst motion away.
Yes,
That's what I call it.
We call it away motion.
Okay.
Away motion has been in everybody's offense. The way that they utilize it is totally different. Their goal is to get the ball snapped as fast as possible and get guys up to max speed as the ball is being snapped, sort of like arena football or the CFL, in order to get guys down the field at a blistering and blazing pace. I literally saw Tyreek Hill go down and catch an 18 to 20 yard in cut deep in, what we call dagger, and the quarterback was able to do it with like a five step read. It was unbelievable. It would take other people multiple steps to do. They're doing things that most people just can't. So they're able to score points in that way. Another thing too, they're able to get people out in front of running backs off of the same motion, right? So a tight end will go in that same out motion. There's a toss to the outside. There's so many different creative things that they're doing off that one motion. And we've seen McVay, we've seen Shanahan with the funky formations where Tyreek Hill last game was in a wing position, tight end wing position, blocking the defensive end backside, right? Just setting up plays for later. It never came back, but I'm sure it's a shot somewhere down there. So there's a lot of different ways they're scoring, but I believe the offense coordinator is doing some things that NFL haven't seen in a long time, and also their quarterback is extremely accurate. And here's the thing, you can compare Devontae Smith, A.J. Brown, Devontae Adams, whoever you want with receivers. The speed element of Jalen Waddle and Tyreek Hill is the most potent, it's the scariest version of NFL receiver play that you can play against. Every defense coordinator will tell you this. Whether it was Randy Moss out there playing, Tyreek Hill is just a different level of scary because of how fast they run and how he can beat you.
Right. So that's what I'm hearing from you is do they do a few things differently than other teams? Yes, but they have the fastest personnel to be able to execute.
It's how they do it.
Almost 85% of their offensive snaps have motion. Okay, and
number one in the league.
Right, number one in the league. And one of the main reasons, there's many as Jay just attested to, but one of the main reasons they do motion is it's really difficult to jam and press motion. So now these guys scream off the line of scrimmage. Right. And that's why what Jay said is so true. Basic concepts, like they catch their basic, let's say it's a glance route. Let's say it's 5 steps and break in. They do that 3-4 yards further down the field than the average team, just because of their speed. So instead of a route being caught at maybe 7 or 8 or 9 yards, that same route off motion with them is caught at 12 or 13 yards, and then they have run after catch.
Right. There's less people in that area. Right. It's less hands. Right. It's windows now. You're further down the field. Right. So and here's the other thing. They run the ball extremely well. Yep. And and a lot of it is misdirection. We talked about those motions, but you see this a bunch in the backfield. One guy going this way, the other guy going the opposite way. They're able to figure out how to get a guy in front. So it's tough to stop this thing.
They just present. I did a piece on the matchup show this week where it was from the Giants game 2 weeks ago, where they basically ran the exact same screen, one to Waddle and one to Hill. They just presented totally differently to the defense. So the presentation is totally different, but it's the exact same play. They do a lot of that, where the presentation is totally, you don't know as a defense what you're getting, but the plays are the same. And it's just a difficult offense to deal with tactically, conceptually, and then Jay hit it right on the head. The speed element, it's everything. And then what happens is if you decide you want to play single high, and then they put Hill outside the numbers and he runs by you like he did last week against Carolina. He runs by you like we've seen him do.
Yeah.
And they also, I was going to say, they use a fullback just like Shanahan does.
Which is really interesting, that they play almost 50% of their snaps out of 21 personnel with a fullback, and every coach I talked to said you have to treat that as 11. You have to treat it as if it's 11 personnel, not 21, because that's the way they do it formationally.
Right. Because they want you to respond a certain way defensively, and you have to still sort of treat it like it's a different look.
And that's Alec Ingold, and he does have an injury, but they do expect him to play. But man, it's...
One other point, if I could say.
Sure.
And I got this from a coordinator because I thought this was pretty next level stuff. The guy who's played against him. When they motion across the formation, particularly with Tyreek Hill, when he goes in what appears to be jet motion, that puts a real burden on the defense for this reason, because now you have to decide if that's jet motion or if it's change of strength motion. And those are two different things, okay? And you know exactly what I'm talking about. Those are two different things from a defensive standpoint. It's another reason why you have to play a ton of split safety, because with split safety, your coverage is balanced, and you don't have to you don't have to get caught up as much into this change of strength because you're balanced. So that's another reason you have to play a ton of split safety and not get caught in single high.
What do you mean by a change of strength?
So in the single high, so if when you say change of strength, usually it's how many guys are on one side of the ball in comparison to the other side, right? And the defense is usually called based on where the tight end is, based on many years ago. And so once Tyreek Hill goes in motion, right, he can put a third guy on that side. And now if you're in single safety, you have to roll the safety. So the strong safety that was on the opposite side has to go back to the center of the field. The other guy has to come back up. So it's a whole defensive adjustment that has to take place. Therefore, if you play too high, now you don't have to worry about the adjustment as much. But they snap the ball so quick that you don't have time to adjust. So automatically, just from that standpoint, you're behind. Right. Because your linebackers don't even get a chance to kick out by the time the ball is snapped. So you're out of position right from the stop.
So what it is, Adam, is it's whether if they're in a 2-by-2 set, two receivers on each side, and all of a sudden Hill goes in motion, now you have to decide, is that jet motion, or is he now going to the other side to make it 3-by-1, and that changes, if you're in single high, how you want to play.
And the mental gymnastics for the defensive backs, because they've seen this on tape.
That's why I mentioned Brown.
Communication.
They've not seen this.
Right. Oh, man.
Right. Well, it could be a rough night.
That's a good point. Very fair.
You know,
my guess is Sidney Brown did not see this against Iowa.
I knew exactly where he was going.
That would probably be just a guess. What do you think?
I don't know.
Or Minnesota?
I don't know if Iowa had receivers.
Oh, that too.
Probably not Minnesota either.
Oh, my God.
Yeah, no.
As a Penn State fan, I feel shameful about laughing at that joke right now. But yes, probably in the Big Ten in general, they probably did not. Sidney Brown probably thinks Miami reinvented offensive football this year. So
here's the Eagles. In order for the Eagles to get close to slowing this team down, they have to do things that we haven't seen from them on tape, which is the hardest part to, kind of put your brain around, because there's not many teams, only the Bills, that were able to get hands on the guys going down the field, and they have veteran players in those positions.
And it's division, so they see them, they know.
But if you let these guys get a head start at the line of scrimmage with this motion and just think that you're going to stop them in the secondary, it's not happening. That's why your nickel guy may be the most important guy on the field today. And Eli, no, it is, because they put everyone in condensed splits. They stack you right behind a tight end or another receiver. So whoever's jamming the point has to get a lot of somebody, and we haven't did that yet. So that's what you're nervous about.
And reduced splits, as Jake can attest, reduced splits automatically force corners to play with more width and depth. Right. They're not going to press Hill on a reduced split. That's not going to happen. Right. Bradbury's not pressing. He's not going to be pressing anybody.
Anyway, it's funny.
Yeah, I agree.
We talk a lot. Adam and I talk on the podcast just about the NFL dynamics and what everybody's into, and we so often talk about the proliferation of the Shanahan-style offense and the proliferation of the Vic Fangio-style defense. Well, here are the Miami Dolphins, who don't have the style of Vic Fangio defense. They have Vic Fangio himself, and of course, Mike McDaniel looks like he is. Tell me what you hear about the league on Mike McDaniel as it relates to being a Shanahan disciple.
Everyone knew how smart he was but you weren't sure if he had the presence because he's a smaller frame guy.
Yeah. A little quirky.
A little weird. Looks like a librarian.
Very academic.
He's very
I spent a lot of time with him 2 summers ago at an event. He's super smart. So fascinating to talk to.
He is. But the thing is, the players just want to be great, and they see how great he is, and they bought in. And look, they had the Tua issue last year with the injuries. They got through that. Well, I'm sure we'll talk about that tonight. But no, there's definitely buy-in there. There's no question about it. And obviously, you have a big decision to make. They've got the 5th-year option picked up, but do they want to extend his contract? That's going to come into play after the season.
So yeah, I was going to ask you about that, about buy-in, because if you look at those teams that I mentioned that have scored among the top 5 in NFL history, the Rams team had Kurt Warner, right? The Broncos team had Peyton Manning. The the Saints team had Drew Brees. So you're talking about an elite class of quarterback, and here come the Miami Dolphins with Tua. Where would you?
Of course, we didn't know Kurt Warner was elite at that time.
We did not know, but he did turn out to be elite.
Yeah.
So is Tua in the Miami Dolphins' vision? Because they have to make a pretty.
He'll be their quarterback next year. Right.
After next year.
Right. He'll be their quarterback next year because he signed through next year.
Right, but doesn't mean they can't give him an extension this offseason if they feel like
it's going to come. Right. It's going to come down to how healthy he is. Now, I want to. We talked about. I hinted at this. I talked at the last show that I ran into a former NFL quarterback. Did a really good in-depth study of Tua. His team plays the Dolphins this year, and he's seen him in training camp. He said, "Look, the kid when he sees it, with that first read, you see it. The numbers are fantastic. But if you make him whole in the football, that's where it becomes the sitting duck.
Correct.
All right,
that's where last year. By the way, that's where Jeff and I have been talking about this for 2 weeks now.
Right.
Yep.
That is when he struggles. He's feet are in cement. I don't care if he's 300 pounds. It doesn't matter.
Right.
He doesn't see it. This is what this quarterback.
That's why the first window. Yeah. That's why that's the key.
Yeah.
Because he's not a late in the down pocket quarterback.
Right.
He doesn't sit in the pocket. If he has to sit in the pocket, his arm strength deteriorates significantly. He's not a strong arm guy. He's a rhythmic guy.
Right.
Okay. So he can throw it really well. Up to 15, 18 yards, and he can throw a fade. Fade is not an arm strength throw. He's a great fade ball thrower, but that's not an arm strength throw. But he can't sit on his back foot in the pocket. If you are able to take away those first window throws, his efficiency drops significantly.
All right, I want to talk a little bit more about Tua and then the plan of attack tonight to try to slow him down a little bit based on what you guys just said. We're going to talk more about that. We'll get into defense, too. We're having a great time here at Fringe Bar, 140 North Columbus Ave here on the Delaware River waterfront. It is an amazing place. We're getting ready for the big game tonight. Let's pause for a second and hear more about our friends at Fringe Bar.
Must I do? Cause stuck in the good and breathing. I wouldn't bug him and he won't stop chasing. Yeah, the biggest. Yeah, the biggest.
All right, welcome back to Inside the Birds pregame live here at Fringe Bar, 140 North Columbus Ave. What a great place. And they have awesome specials right now. They have drink specials, wing specials. They got people coming in. I hear the Caribbean jerk wings are the thing to get. So hopefully I can get a little bit after the show. I can't wait for that. Obviously some great blue gin drinks as well, also at a great rate. So come on over down to Fringe Bar here, 140 North Columbus Ave. We were talking about Tua, right? And you guys noted that the offense looks like it's a quick hitting offense. It's a very 3-step drop heavy offense.
It's
right?
3-step, quick 5-step.
Right.
Balls out.
So if you do that as the base of your offense, what I'm wondering is about the sustainability of that week after week after week as the tape progresses. And here we are here already in week number 7. So what is the plan, Jay? What is the plan of strategy when you know that the quarterback is going to try to hit that first read as much as possible? The offense is designed to do it, but that that if he has to go to 2 or 3, that's where you can win. How do you get him to 2 or 3?
You got to be able to stop the run with 6, right? So this team. So we're talking about the passing offense because it's the number 1 passing offense in the league. But guess who's the number 1 rushing offense in the league? The Dolphins.
The Dolphins. They're number 1 everything in the league.
Yeah.
Great point.
So the key is to figure out a way to stop the run with 6, right? And that'll allow you to have enough guys in the back end to be in their lanes. But if you have to commit more guys to the line of scrimmage, it's just so many open lanes there that you can't stop them. So I think that's what the Eagles are talking about pretty much this whole week, that the defensive line has to get after it and that they have to be in position to keep the linebackers clean so they can stop the run with 6.
Speaking of stopping the run, Greg, I want to get to it for a second. So the show you do with Clay Harbor, you raved about Jordan Davis. What did you like about Davis last week?
I thought Davis played his best game as an Eagle last week. He played 44 snaps, which is exactly why they drafted him. I thought he just played really, really well.
Technique was good. He didn't get stood up.
I thought he was strong in the run game. I thought he showed some pass rush moves. I thought that was Jordan Davis with what they want. But again, that was the most snaps he'd ever played, and he was not tired.
That's great encouraging news for them. You were going to say?
No, I totally agree with that. So he was one of the position groups that I believe that kind of stood out in that game. It's tough this past game because when you really look at it, the defense gave up six points.
Yep.
Right, you get the kick catch interference, which was 3 points, and then the offense gave up the rest of the points. So the defense played really well. Offensively, we just imploded.
Yeah.
Can I just to play off something Jay said a moment ago about playing the run with 6? That is such an important point. So your linebackers are critical in the run game, absolutely critical, because you're really not going to get a ton of help from your safeties.
Right.
Just by the way Miami plays.
Way back.
So your linebackers become absolutely critical in the run game. Now, I don't know Sean Desai well enough to know if or the Eagles and their general worldview of how they want to play. But just because this is kind of what I do and I think about all this stuff, far too much. I started to think about teams in the Big 12. Now, I don't think the Eagles are going to do this, but like in the Big 12, all these teams play 3-3.
Right.
And one of the reasons they do that is to deal with RPOs and quick rhythm pass games.
Sure.
Now, I don't think the Eagles are going to come out in a 3-3. I'd be very surprised. But, you have to figure out a way to be able to stop the run, just like Jay said, with 6, and your linebackers are absolutely critical in that area.
Sure.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Agree?
And critical, and I want you guys to realize that one of the positions that's a linebacker in the 11 defense is the nickelback.
Yep.
So that's a part of the linebacker group. That's not a part of the secondary. And when you're trying to stop the run with 6, you're going to need that 7th guy to be able to be in the box and out of the box in order to stop the run, especially with a team that's a perimeter run team. A lot of these plays are going to be coming toward
him.
Yeah. Give me Terrell Edmonds as my nickel in base then, and then maybe I'm getting Josiah Scott deep because, then they can audible and throw on him, but he's much more of a linebacker type safety than you would say a coverage safety.
I don't care who it is, as long as they're physical in the run game, getting into the box when they can, and also rerouting. Don't allow Tyreek Hill to get a full sprint up to your safety.
And that's
you just
hard.
Can't. It's tough.
That's the toughest thing about this.
Right. What did Buffalo and New England do on tape, Greg, if anything, that enabled them to slow down Miami a little bit?
They had a really good feel for the routes off splits and motions. Now, again, they play in the same division.
Right.
So I don't know when the Eagles saw Miami on their schedule. What week are we in? 6?
Week 7.
Wow.
Yeah.
So normally teams, when the schedule comes out, are not necessarily looking ahead to week 7.
Right.
They're looking at, they obviously deal with week 1 and 2, and then they deal normally with the first quarter of the season, and they deal with their division. But they're not necessarily looking ahead to week 7. So I would imagine, based on what Miami is doing, that the Eagles probably had their staff going back 3 years, scouts, whoever, breaking down the Dolphins' offense in great detail.
Sure.
They weren't waiting until this week to look at the Dolphins.
Right.
So you have to you have to have a feel for their route concepts. You have to be able to have some kind of safety rotation that deals with all these routes so you can take away first window throws.
There's that word again, safety.
Yeah, and because safeties are critical when you play them.
And this is where joint practices hurt you, to me, right? So the Eagles had a joint practice last year with the Dolphins, right? So they're going to lean on that tape as much as they can, along with what they're seeing on. But if they can meld those two together and try to figure out some type of game plan for that, I think that's an added advantage for both teams to kind of get an insight that you wouldn't have if you were playing, just opposite division.
Sure.
And also on that, neither safety of those who will start tonight was with the Eagles last year.
Right.
Think about that. This is going to be tough.
And look, I'm not saying that pass rush isn't important, because one thing when they did play Buffalo was Daquan Jones, former Penn Stater, I believe, correct?
Yes, we can say something good about Penn State
He
today.
probably had the best game of his career.
I remember that, yeah.
He was winning as if there was no offensive lineman in front of him. Did you watch it?
Yeah, I saw.
Yeah. Now, again, could that happen a couple of times tonight? Because Jalen Carter certainly can do that. Fletch can do that. Milton Williams has played well. Could that happen? Sure, it could. And I remember there were also 2 of the sacks came on busts by the O-line. Could that happen? Yeah, but you don't go into a game saying, hey, we're going to win because they're going to bust. That's not the way you think about going into a game.
Right.
That was, and then Tua did make a bad read. Sometimes that happens too.
Right.
But we're just talking about the conceptual underpinnings of their offense and the best way to tactically approach it.
Sure. Now, one thing that's not going to surprise the Eagles is that, as you guys mentioned, Tyreek Hill's on the field, and he's really good.
And he's fast, by the way.
Very fast, and he has
That's
800.
confirmed. Yeah.
It is. Sources say he's very fast. He has 814 yards already through 6 games. Yeah, 6 games. Jason, did you have 814 yards in a year?
I don't know about 18 in a year. No, 800 yards in a year. No, it's like the guy's playing at an all-time, clip, and he's a Hall of Famer that's playing. And that's just the truth. He's a Hall of Fame football player, and he's going to go down as one of the best receivers that ever played this game.
Would you guys believe that is not the most receiving yards in league history through 6 weeks?
Oh, I believe
and
that. Jerry Rice played.
No, it goes back to 1942. Don Hudson.
I was going to say
of
Don.
the Green Bay
Green Bay
Packers.
I was going to say Don Hudson.
I don't even know how it's. They must not have been doing
He was
Packers.
Tyreek Hill of his time.
He must have been.
Yeah, he was Tyreek Hill of his time.
I believe it.
I didn't see him
You
play
didn't see that
live.
one?
You took my chance to rob the question away. Greg, what was it like?
Right.
They must have thought he was an alien.
Like you have, just for fun, like some of the fans, just go back and look at his yards per catch. It's unbelievable.
But nobody
for back then.
Yeah, nobody thought they threw the ball in 1942. Wow, that's incredible. But Hill is on pace for more than 2,300 receiving yards.
Is that what he's on pace for?
Yes, that would break.
Exactly, yes.
That would shatter.
Wow.
That would shatter the record of 1,964 set by Calvin Johnson, Megatron, of course, in 2012.
I can't say this enough. He's the fastest football player that I've ever seen. Now, I'm talking about football player,
Right.
Not a straight line guy, same boat type of guy, but just a guy that plays with quickness and speed and able to keep it all without slowing down, stop, start. I've never seen anything like this. And to every defensive coordinator, he is a nightmare. Just knowing just being in a defensive meeting as a coach, understanding how they break down game plans, speed is a problem, especially with this team.
I'm not sure I've ever seen better change of direction either.
true.
A guy who could just.
It's really interesting when you look back how certain games play out. This just popped into my head. Last year, Tua had his worst game of the year against the Los Angeles Chargers. Okay, he was 3 for 17 at one point. I think he ended 10 for 28. If I told you what the Chargers did, you'd say, that's crazy. Why did they do that? How could you possibly do that? You know what they did? And it worked in that game?
They blitz him a ton?
Nope.
No?
They matched up. The Chargers play boundary and field corner. So they matched up Michael Davis, number 43, who no one would say is a top 5 corner in the league. They matched him up as the boundary corner, basically playing 0 man against Hill and Waddle if they were the boundary receiver. Okay? And they would take the safety, the boundary safety, and just basically move him into the middle of the field to take away windows. Because now there's an extra player there. Because they're not playing anyone over the top of Hill or Waddle to the boundary side. Davis probably had the best game of his career. Hill beat him one time when Davis fell down for a 60-yard touchdown. But other than that, Hill and Waddle were not factors in the game.
Wow.
And you would say to yourself, oh yeah, you can't do that. It worked that game. But you can't say that. You can't say, well, just put Slay or Bradbury on him one-on-one, and that's the way to do it.
Would do that.
Well, I'm pretty sure that there were rules to that. Just because a guy's in zero man the entire time, the coach is saying, hey, if you're going to get beat, this is where you funnel him to. Right? You can't get beat over the top, and you can't get beat outside.
Right.
But you can get beat inside because we have safety help.
There'll at least be somebody there, even if they're not
Yes.
specifically helping you. But what they did is they did have that extra boundary safety body that they put inside, and now that clogs up windows.
Sure.
And that's when you would make Tua hold on to the football. If you're taking away a window.
That's the whole point. That's the whole point.
Right. Is it? And I know Waddle has missed some time, but he has not had a big Jalen Waddle game yet. And I wonder if that's because the Dolphins have just done such a great job of getting that ball quickly out to their first read, often being Tyreek Hill, that Waddle just has not had yet the big Jalen Waddle game that we're
Which
all
could happen any time.
It's going to happen.
Yeah.
But it seems in the two games that I watched that Tua, as you were mentioning, was able to get the ball to Tyreek Hill when he wanted to, as pretty frequently at a good enough clip.
It looks like 7-on-7.
You're absolutely right.
So that's what it looks like. It looks like 7-on-7, and there's very few teams in the league. Remember, there's always this gap in between the game and practice, right? So there's a gap. So in practice, you get everything out on rhythm and on time. The coach is happy. The practice is going smooth and clean, and everybody's excited about the game.
Yep.
And then you go to the game and you realize that there's an actual defense that's not scouting to help you, right? And they're throwing off your timing. There's no difference right now between the two with the Dolphins.
Definitely.
So the defense are not being able to throw them off time yet. Somebody will, but not yet.
And by the way, everything we're talking about is normal down and distance. I don't want people to think, you get to 3rd and 9 or 3rd and 11, and it changes a little bit. And obviously you can say that about any offense versus any defense, but we're talking normal down and distance, 1st and 10, 2nd and 4, those kinds of plays where they can stay rhythmic.
Right.
If you can get them into 3rd and 9, 3rd and 11, where everything can't quite be as rhythmic, then we'll see.
Do you see this? We talked about James Bradbury and Slay going into this game, probably not having their best start, especially since they were just signed to long-term extensions in the offseason. If they struggle tonight, which, you're going to struggle a little bit against Hill, and you're going to take your shots, you know that. But if this is a disaster, is that sort of we talk about the schedule coming up. Do you see that as maybe a litmus test? I mean, they're going to have to face the Bills, who have explosive receivers, the 49ers, if they're healthy.
It's more because of the replacements that are playing at safety.
Right.
It's more, and the guys talked about the communication on the back end.
Right.
So you've got tonight's game. This will be the most communication they'll have to have up to this point. Then you've got the Chiefs and Andy Reid, what they do in Week 11. Then you've got, I know they play the Bills, but they're a different type of offense. But then you've got the Niners in Week 13. And by the way, they might be on a collision course against the Niners in the championship game again.
Yeah.
And we know everything that Kyle Shanahan does. And yes,
Also had a 21%.
yeah, with Kyle Juszczyk. So
Yes.
it is fascinating in the mental gymnastics, and that's why when Greg talked about it, pro personnel people, they give it, okay, they know each team. They've given Nick Sirianni and Sean Desai, okay, this is what they do. It's one thing to say what they do,
right?
But then try to slow it down. It's different when you don't have the horses at safety.
Sure, and I'm thinking, if the Eagles play well tonight and lose 24-23, 24-20, you say, all right, it sucks. They lost 2 in a row.
That's how they did it.
But you're not going to sit there and probably lament everything going on with their defensive backfield. They give up 40 points, and the reinforcements you're talking about aren't really just reinforcements because who's coming? Avante Maddox is not coming back.
But the context is, how do they lose? If they're going to get smoked tonight.
That's my point. Is that you're going to not. You might look for something to inspire some confidence.
If the run defense shockingly, like by the way, they've not faced anyone like Raheem Mostert. Believe it or not, 32. Still one of the fastest backs in the league. He's still explosive. He's got 11 touchdowns, and he's good in the pass game as well. And so there's a big test tonight.
Did you say he has 11 touchdowns?
Yeah,
He does.
This year?
Totally, yeah.
Do you think the Eagles are going to stay with their 5-man front?
Well, they came out with 40 tackles to start the game last week.
They came out with a 6-man front, but that's what they were playing against.
Right.
They won't be doing that tonight.
No.
Do you think they'll be in their 5-man front?
No, they got to go 4-man front.
See, I do too. I think that too.
A 4-man front? What kind of front?
4-man front, like a traditional.
I think they got to go. I think they got to go 4-2 nickel, not 5.
Okay.
Yeah.
But again, we'll
Here's
find
a
out.
question though: which two linebackers are you coming out with? Because you just said it's important to stop the run with your 6-man, so you might want Zach Cunningham out there. But we all know that when Zach Cunningham's out there, the offense tends to do a little bit of this, that, and then try to throw on him. So do you put
I don't know
Morrow
if
and
Nakobe Dean
Dean?
is such a great pass defender at this point in his career either.
Well, that's a very fair point. That is a very fair
He
point.
didn't do a lot of that in college.
No, he's a run game guy.
Yeah. Well, this is going to be a stressful time for the Eagles defense.
I feel like we got to get on the Eagles here. Come on.
I know.
Because the Eagles can score.
Right. Last question, though, real quick.
We'll get into that.
When you talk about a very heavy 3-step drop offense and everything rhythm, the Eagles have a lot of length up front. They got long-armed guys.
Yep.
Hassan Reddick,
That could
speed,
be-
length. And
could be a factor.
I think Tua has more passes batted at the line of scrimmage now than he had all of last year. Is that an area where the Eagles can be very disruptive tonight?
Well,
Or
their pass game works between the numbers. You have to be well aware of that.
Right. Jay, I mean, you see like the big pause of Jalen Carter and
It can happen. It can happen. I just don't. I think there's teams that actually coach it. I don't think the Eagles sit back and coach. Put your hands up. I think they're trying to get to the passer, and then instinctively guys do it.
Right.
But there's teams that just teach guys to do it. That put their hands up, and we don't have a bunch of guys that are 6'8".
No.
6'7". You know what I mean?
Where's Calais
but Josh Sweat has the
6'5".
length, the wingspan of someone who's
Almost
6'6".
35.
Definitely
Yeah.
can work.
Yeah, Jalen Carter.
Yeah.
So they have guys there to do
the
that.
guys that are blocking the balls are going to be the D tackles more so than the edges.
Right.
The edges are trying to bend the corner, and there's a natural throwing lane through them anyway, just because they're trying to turn the corner.
Last thing. I know you don't want to blitz a whole lot, but a 5th man just to speed up to his clock, maybe a late, Nick Morrow down the middle.
That's
or
situational.
Kobe down the middle.
That's not going to be like, hey, we're going to blitz.
No. I know. Like third downs.
That
things
becomes
like that.
situational.
If they can confuse them, like I'm not saying that you don't take your chances and blitz.
Right.
I think that you do. You have to play your ball game. You have to be calculated, understand what they're doing.
Yep.
Very fair. All right, you know what? The Eagles have some really good wide receivers, too. They've got a good offense. Believe it or not, I got asked this in a radio interview.
Yeah.
If you go look at who's number 2 in most offensive categories, it's the Philadelphia Eagles,
Yeah.
and they're not that far behind the Dolphins other than the whole point scored thing. So we're going to get into that. We'll get into Jalen Hurts. We'll get into the Eagles offense, the running game in hour 2 here coming up. First, we want to pause real quick to hear from our friends at Ocean Casino Resort in Atlantic City.
Go to get your game on. Go for the beers. Go for the cheers. Go for the hit and the hits. Go for the stakes and the stakes. Go to get your parlay on. Go to get your party on. Go for the scene. Go for the screens. Go for the gallery. Go for the win. Go to Ocean. Visit theoceanac.com to plan.
I think they would be open.
All right, welcome back to Inside the Birds pregame live here. Geoff Mosher and Adam Caplan, joined, of course, as always, by Greg Cosell and Jason Avant. We're having a blast here at Fringe Bar, 140 North Columbus Ave on the Delaware waterfront. People are getting excited for the game. We got drinks. Next to us, as part of the bar, like I mentioned, 250-seat stadium-style seating and an enormous screen to watch tonight's game between the Eagles and Dolphins. You got to come on down, enjoy it. Great food specials, great drink specials, and just a wonderful atmosphere here at Fringe Bar on 140 North Columbus Ave, right here on the Delaware waterfront. The Eagles, the line has been a little funny. I guess the line is now up to 3.
Yeah.
Eagles favored by. Word must have got out, Kelly Green Day, Kelly Green night, so you got to get a little extra.
Yeah, despite us saying how great the Dolphins personnel's on offense, they don't care about that.
No.
They think the Eagles are going to kill them.
Yeah, they think the Eagles are going to win, and I think the over-under is about 50 points there, the total. So maybe a sort of a high-scoring game, which not surprising because it's a matchup of the top 2 offenses in the NFL. Yes, the Eagles actually have good offensive personnel. Also, interestingly, I just want to get to the whole Kelly Green thing again because Mike Quick told Derek Gunn on our platform, on Gun on One, that when he played in the 80s, right, the offense for the Eagles then was Wilbert Montgomery one way, Wilbert Montgomery the other way. Oh, and then you throw the ball. And it sort of felt like, last week against the Jets, anything the Eagles tried to do, run it this way, run it that way, was not helpful. They only averaged 3.6 yards per carry. They were held to 80 yards rushing against the Jets. I mean, Wilbert's had that in the first quarter of some games back in the day.
Number 31, Wilbert Montgomery.
Yeah.
He was one of my favorite players. He was
good.
I thought he was kind of ahead of his time.
Sure.
If he got hurt with his injury today, when you guys could come back quicker.
Come back, yeah.
Because he was a great back, and Jaws used to tell me, he was probably the best wide receiver on the team too.
Yeah.
I mean, Wilbur was like Marshall Faulk before Marshall Faulk.
Sure.
It's just that he got hurt, and
It's all about the era you play in sometimes.
Yeah.
Can't get you fouled.
He was so good.
And a long
Mike
time
Quick as well, by the way, the right patellar tendonitis.
By the way, Mike Quick might have been a Hall of Famer too. What do you have? Like 1,490 yards in a 14-game schedule or something?
Back when they didn't really throw a lot.
But yeah. He was great.
He was phenomenal. Number 82.
Yeah.
Well, we know that the Jets had a good defensive front, and that was a large part of why the Eagles, as you mentioned on the Inside the Birds platform this week, Greg, you don't remember a time where the Eagles' offensive line got handled the way it did.
That was the first time I could really remember where they kind of got handled a bit.
Right.
And it wasn't just Jack Driscoll. We know he had his problems. Obviously, he's not playing tonight at right tackle because Lane will be back, which is big. But it wasn't just Jack Driscoll last week. Their O-line got handled a bit last week.
John DiFilippo told us that.
Same thing.
It's the first thing John said. He goes, guys, I got to be honest. It's the first time I've seen this all season.
Yeah, no.
He said the entire line.
Yeah, they got handled.
He said as much as Hurts might have bailed, he understood it. Because if you're sensing that you guys can't protect, you're going to start moving.
Yeah. I thought in the New England game, if you remember week 1, the offensive line had some struggles too, but they obviously rebounded really well and had great monster efforts in week 2, 3, and 4, especially in the run game. Miami's defensive front looks like it's good, fast, aggressive, but in the games I watched also, Greg and Jason, I thought that there was some opportunity to run the ball on them at times. I thought the Bills did that, and even last week Carolina a few times popped some runs on them, and I wonder if the Eagles make sense for them to get back to basics tonight for 2 reasons. 1, it's something they're good at. 2, long, sustained drives help you keep the ball out of the opponent's hand. Does that make sense for why the Eagles might want to be?
I guess what fascinates me, and we don't know the answer to this, maybe, Jay, you'll have a good feel for this. I'm going to be fascinated by the mentality of Sirianni and Brian Johnson in this game, because I could be 1,000% wrong. Obviously, I'm not in the meetings. I'm not there. I don't think the Eagles are going to take the approach of let's shorten the game. I think they're going to feel like they can put up 40 on this defense if they everything's working the right way. And I don't think they're going to, it was years ago when they played the Colts and Peyton Manning would say, let's cut down their possessions by 2 or 3, and that would be great, except that the Colts, instead of 12 possessions, would have 9, and they'd still score 5 touchdowns.
Right.
And then you'd still lose.
Notes.
Is that in your notes?
Yeah, because he was going to ask me.
Yeah.
And I've sat with coaches
and again,
before.
I'm not saying that the
Sort of a
Eagles wouldn't
fallacy.
want wonderful long drives that end in touchdowns. I'm not saying that that's not a good thing. I just don't know philosophically if that's the way they're going to approach the game. But I could be wrong.
Although we could see now on that point though, we see this once or twice a year with them. The Green Bay game last year. It was not their plan to run it for 300 yards. They will stick with the run only if they have success immediately.
Sure.
If not, it's gone. They're going to throw the football. But that's the thing. So when you guys watch their tape, Jason, is there a way to run on this team, Miami? You see a way to do it?
100%.
Okay.
Like there's so many. Like Carolina did a great job last week of
Especially early.
early in the game, ripping off runs, and I believe that can be emulated. And they were doing their best to try to stop it. They had 8 men in the box a few times. The only thing about Vic Fangio's defense is that when he commits to the run game, they don't always blitz, which opens you up for play action. And I know the Eagles have seen that because Bryce Young was able to take advantage on some play action throws.
A couple of times,
when you put 8 guys up, and they had 8 guys within 7 yards of the line of scrimmage, and those guys are not blitzing, that's a play action dream right there.
Right.
And so the Eagles are definitely going to be able to do some things like that. Here's the thing the Eagles are a long drive team in general. This year.
That was my point. Getting back after a tough week last week, maybe you get back to your basics.
Yeah, right. So this is not
out of character.
Out of character to have passing plays and run plays that equal a long drive. So that's within their framework. But yeah, I agree with Greg. I don't think that they're going to say, you know what, let us scrap our passing attack in order to run it to keep it away from the other team's offense. No, I believe they can. Like there's clear holes. advantage. And this is and I'm going to say this. Xavier Howard's a really good player, but I think he's an overrated player. That's just me.
I think he's a beatable player.
A beatable player. That's what I mean.
A good player,
Sure.
but a beatable player.
The reason is that he picks and chooses when he goes man within their zone.
Right.
But he's a flat, just a stay flat and square guy. And when you have a stay flat and square guy, you can get behind him. And guys each year get behind him at a high clip.
Yep.
And this is that game you can get behind him because he never wants to turn and run. He wants to stay as square as long as possible. And you can't do that when guys are running full speed at you.
Right.
That's the one thing I seen on tape. I'm like, man, you can go by. You can go by this.
And I think he's a little bit of a Kluwer and a Kier.
Yeah.
Would you agree with that?
Yeah, I agree with that.
Yeah. But, which gets to a point which I'm going to be fascinated to see. The Dolphins in their base defense, okay, their base is a 5-2 front, okay? And they play Kohu at one outside corner and Howard at the other in their base.
Right.
And Kohu's a beat him. He's the guy. The Bills went after him big time a few
Yes,
weeks
they did.
ago. Big time, ate him up.
Undrafted player, correct? If I'm not
I
mistaken.
believe so, from a small school in Texas, like
Yeah, I think
Texas
you're
Commerce or something like
Kingsville
that.
Commerce, yes.
And so again, the Eagles have been a lot more 11 personnel. So when they go with 3 wide, and the Dolphins would go nickel, then the Dolphins bring Eli Apple, and he plays on the outside. And Kohu's a better slot corner than he is an outside corner. He actually has played reasonably well on the slot.
Right.
But I'm curious to see what their approach is because he's a very beatable player on the outside.
Right. So what you're saying is, and if I'm putting my offensive coordinator cap on, if I come out in 12 personnel and they respond in base, then Kohu's on the outside.
He will be on the outside.
He will be on the
Unless they
outside.
do something totally,
And that's where
would
you
doubt
think
it.
I might want to come out in 12, throw a little bit, but then open up that passing game out of 12 personnel. And again, you're facing Vic Fangio's defense in general, Adam, right? The voids are going to, what do people always tell us?
Flip said,
Take what they give you underneath. Right?
he didn't have the numbers. He goes, his study of Fangio's defenses over the years, they play a ton of cover 3, at least in his opinion, without seeing the stats.
They play more single high than you think.
Okay.
Everybody says they're all split safety. They may start with a lot of quarter structure, but they play a lot more single high than you think.
More than you do. Okay.
Go ahead, finish.
But what he said, John said, if they're playing cover 3, they're beaters. He goes, you can do it, but he also told us, he goes, the thing is, man, they make you bleed. They want you to be desperate because it's a lot of dink and dunk. You can't throw it over the top. You can't again. It's really hard. And we'll see what they do tonight at that other corner spot.
Right.
But he makes you be patient because that's what Vic wants you to do. Get desperate because you're moving the ball downfield and you're sick and tired of having 14-play drives and then you make a mistake. That's what he does.
The thing that they do well is the one stat on defense that they do well is get to the quarterback.
Yeah.
They can get to the quarterback. I believe they're 5th in sacks or something like that in the league. So they can get to the quarterback. Now, that cover 3 that they're talking about, to me, it's a bastardized cover 4.
I would agree with that.
How so?
Such a great
Were you going to say bastardized? Really?
Yeah. So because the safety, like say if they're on the left hash, the safety never goes toward the middle of the field. He actually stays on the opposite hash. And the other guy comes down, but he's at like 12 yards.
Yeah.
So it's like cover 3, but it's not. It's
right.
actually like in between the two. And so and then it's a cover 4 principle that they do is that when they have trips, that guy backside that's coming down is looking up number 3, which is a cover 4 principle. It's not a cover 3 principle.
Right.
So yeah, I knew you would enjoy that.
No, it's
Yeah.
future 100%. It's like cover 4 with a hook player or cover 3 with a robber.
Exactly. That's what I was saying. I was calling it 3 hole.
You know exactly what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
Yes.
No, it's posed some problems for some good quarterbacks.
Right.
I mean, I remember a few years ago when Vic was in Denver and Dak Prescott threw a pick, which I did in the matchup show, and it was your classic, the term that's used a lot with the Fangio defense is match, carry, deliver. And they do such a good job with that it's sometimes it's a little blurry as to whether it's cover 4 or cover 3. You're 100% right.
Awesome. Good stuff. By the way, I'm being held accountable, as I should be, by the people watching. Mike Band says, I can't believe Geoff didn't know the Bears won 73-0. To your point about the Bears, right? In an NFL championship
I told you that.
game.
Yeah,
but that means we're both right, because records are regular season. That would be a playoff record of 73 points. I'm just saying, that's the fact.
Well, you're just trying to
regular season.
You're just trying to defend yourself.
Miami Dolphins hold the regular season record for most points scored in a game. All right, so we're both right. We split the difference. That's just my way of saying I'm not going to admit to being wrong. But thank you, Mike Bantz, for appreciating.
I believe Sid Luckman was the quarterback for the Bears.
I believe so. I'm sure. All right. Did you cover him as well, Craig? No, I'm just kidding.
I was on the sideline for that one.
He looks good for 90, doesn't he?
Yeah.
He looks great for 90. Yes. All right. We are going to get more into this Eagles offense, what they can do. We'll want to pause real quick to tell you about our friends from MyBookie, because when your money is on the line, you got to choose a trusted sportsbook that gives you the tools to win, just like MyBookie. At MyBookie, it doesn't matter if your team's up or down. You can easily cash out or bet the game live to come out on the winning side. So use MyBookie for daily odds boost, same game parlays. Take advantage of huge prize pool contests. Plus, MyBookie's got a no strings attached cash bonus that lets you deposit and withdraw quick. So just use the promo code THEBIRDS on your first deposit. That's all one word, the birds, on your first deposit, and receive up to $200 in cash. That's the birds, THEBIRDS, to claim your own cash bonus now. Try the MyBookie money bag to grab a potential Super Bowl frontrunner at long shot odds. Plus 38,000 on the Eagles and Chiefs. Did you hear that? 38,000.
Wow.
Plus 38,000 on Eagles and Chiefs in the Super Bowl. You will not find odds like that anywhere else. So bet anything, anytime, anywhere, only with MyBookie. All right, we have some scores rolling in. Our friend Carl Stevenson says the Eagles win 31-27 tonight. Ron K predicts Eagles win 30-27. Jerry Bando says 34-20. Now, if the Eagles win 34-20, they're going to be feeling pretty good about themselves.
I was going to go 70-50.
70 to 73-70.
That's a college basketball score right there. Wow.
Now, iShine says 42-28, but he didn't give a team, so I'm not quite sure.
It's usually
I
the
can
Eagles,
see it
right?
either way. Yeah. So, and a Bite of Life says IDGAF Eagles are going to out physical the Finn. Do you know what IDGAF stands for, Greg?
I
are you hip with the
give
lingo?
a hoot.
There you go. All right. He says Eagles win 35-27. So a lot of people very happy about the Philadelphia Eagles.
I think the Eagles are going to score tonight.
And let's talk about that, because obviously the eyes are going to be on Jalen Hurts, who's coming off a 4-turnover game. They weren't all his fault. They weren't all his turnovers. But the third down interception, I think, surprised a lot of people.
You mean at the end of the game?
At the end of the Jets game, yes. Surprised people because obviously not only did that turn into the Jets go-ahead touchdown, but it seemed like he was trying to make a bigger play than needed be in that situation. I'll let you guys break down what you thought happened there, starting with you, Jason.
The last play.
The interception.
The interception before to put the Jets up.
Yeah.
If I remember correctly, on that third down, it looked like he had immediate pressure, but it was a ghost. And he actually had more time in the pocket. But instead of just hitting his back foot and throwing the ball, which he probably shouldn't have thrown that ball anyway, he was running away, drifted back, and threw the ball off his back foot into a window that really wasn't there. Thought the play calling can help him out, but he also got to understand the scenario and the situation of the football game, and realize that they have to go, because the ball was at near midfield. I believe it was 45, something or something like that.
Right.
The Jets are going to have to go 75 to 85 yards to score, and do we believe Zach Wilson can do that against our defense?
No, they hadn't done it all game.
Hadn't really did it. They did it twice all game. Right. So, and for 3 points. So I just think Jalen mismanaged the situation. Sometimes the play call, their defensive call was better than the offensive call. Our 2-by-2 set in that situation wasn't the best deployment of offense in that situation. So just eat it, throw it away, to even take a sack. But you just can't throw that ball.
I can tell you what I thought happened.
Well, I wanted to get specifically, Greg, into the fact that you mentioned with Clay Harbor on Inside the Tape that you thought that there was a specific reason that happened. So I'd like you to elaborate on it. No, just for what you sensed.
I'm right.
Right.
But on that particular play, the Jets lined up in a front that they had lined up in earlier in the game, where they had both linebackers and a safety to one side. Okay. On this particular play, it was Adams and the two linebackers. Earlier in the game, it was Whitehead and the two linebackers. And on that particular play earlier in the game, they blitzed all three. So now the Eagles, in response on the interception by Hurts, in response, I'm sure, to that look, they slid their line that way, okay? Now, it turned out that nobody came from that side. They came, but by sliding their line that way, Gainwell crossed the formation, and he had to block a defensive end. And I think because Hurts then realized that no one was coming, but he was going to have a back on a defensive end, he had to speed his tempo up, because Gainwell's not going to block a defensive end for a long period of time. You know, he's just going to try to get in front of him, but he, you know, and therefore Hurts backed up and had kind of lost his firm base and his balance.
Sure.
And I personally think, again, only Jalen could say this, and he's not going to, and there's no reason for him to, but I don't think he picked up Adams, because he threw it right to him. And you never see Jalen, you know, he's thrown
So
picks.
careful.
You've seen Jalen throw picks, obviously, but he doesn't throw those kinds of picks.
Right. Well,
and I just don't think that registered in his throw, because they ran, I broke down the whole play and I wrote it down, because essentially what they did is they ran two inside curl routes with a stutter go and a deep comeback as the outside routes.
Terrible.
Yeah.
For cover 2.
Which I don't like those, but that's it. But the point is I don't think he saw, or I don't think it registered that Adams had dropped back underneath Goddard.
Right. Jay,
Matter of fact, man.
go ahead.
Yeah. So it was. Here's the thing: when you don't run the ball, the linebackers pretty much the entire second half of that game were at 7-on-7 drops. You don't run the ball. The guys were getting back so far, 7, 8, 9 yards back, and it's tough. You're going to have eyes on you. And again, he drifted away. You got to understand this. At the end of the day, you got to understand the situation that we're not losing the game. I don't have to make a play right now.
No.
And I think that was the biggest error.
Yeah. Now, you know, Adam, he took obviously a lot of heat for that. And you look at how the Jets defensive front played, and you could make an argument that Jalen Hurts made plays against that defensive front that maybe a lot of guys wouldn't make.
Yeah, and Jermaine Johnson got to there. Wasn't that big splash play. He got to them throughout the
Johnson's
game.
a pretty good player.
He's really matured, and I talked to the Jets about him. He's having a breakout season, but that's the thing that John DiFilippo told us. He said, look, yes, Hurts would like to have some plays back, especially that one. But if you watch the tape from beginning to end, you'd see that the offensive line had a rough game.
Right.
And it's rare that we say that. You thought so.
You did think, though, that Jermaine Johnson's hit on Hurts that caused an interception was a little bit on Hurts as well, though. I remember you saying that. Michael?
It wasn't a little bit on Hurts. That was on Hurts.
Explain it, because not a lot of people have said that.
He took 4 hitches.
Which one are you talking about?
The one that Jermaine Johnson hit his arm. That's the same exact play.
Oh, you mean that got intercepted by Hall
intercepted
on the
by Hall.
side?
It's the same exact play that he had. It wasn't the same exact play as far as the route concept, but the same mentality that he threw the touchdown to Lamade Zaccheaus in Tampa.
Right.
Everyone praised him. That's a great throw. And I said it on our show
You did
that
say
it was a bad decision.
Right.
Because it took too long. You got to check the ball down. That's going to be there 1 out of 10 times.
That's a
and
great
he
point.
did it again, and that's what happens. You can't sit there and pat the ball with Jack Driscoll and step up 4 times on it, like 1,
point.
2, 3, 4. No, you're going to get hit.
Right.
And that right there, so that right there is on Jalen Hurts. And he made a lot of plays, but to me, he didn't take what the defense gave him consistently. And the defense basically said this: we'll allow you to win against us if you check the ball down and if you run it. But we're not going to allow you to just hold on to the ball and throw it down the field. You won't win that way. But if you check the ball down, you play and not turn the ball over, you play the boring football game, you'll win it. But if you get impatient and you want to, live on your ego and score points, you're going to lose. And that's exactly what happened.
And by the way, the play I was talking about prior to the last interception, where they did bring those guys,
showed the same
that was actually on the Quinnen Williams interception, where they brought the 3 guys, the 2 linebackers and the safety, and that was on the Quinnen Williams interception.
Oh, what a great play by Jermaine Johnson.
Didn't he come all the way across the field to make that?
First of all, he's technically listed as a linebacker, but he's a defensive
He's a
end.
defensive end.
Okay, so he's not, and this is why you respect, was it Ulrich and Salah? You respect them because here's the one thing I took away from watching that game. I don't know. I've watched it maybe 4 times afterward because I want to see exactly where the Eagles stumbled. They have a lot of smart football players on that side of the ball. Jermaine Johnson looked like he was playing stand-up linebacker his entire life because he understood the assignment from the beginning. I'm going to drop out and I'm spying Jalen Hurts wherever his eyes go because we're sending the blitz. I'm going right now. And that's what he did. As soon as Jalen Hurts, as soon as he popped out, went right to the play. And here's another thing on that play. And this is like nuance. This is where nuance gets you beat. Dallas Goedert runs a screen. If Dallas Goedert understands the play and the scenario, you reduce, meaning you come back to the quarterback. You understand where your linemen are in phase with the defensive line. You realize that they're not going to be able to make this block if I stay up the field, so I reduce. That little thing alone would have prevented an interception, maybe even made a big play.
Right. I mean, if ever a night where you take what the defense gives, because you know against a Fangio defense, you're going to get certain voids in the zone, certain areas. We saw the Bills throw the ball to their tight end, to their running back. I think I even saw Carolina be able to throw underneath quite a bit to move the ball. I mean, I would think that tonight you want Jalen Hurts to go back to that guy who just takes the open. Don't try to be the hero on every play.
Yeah, because that's the thing. What's interesting is, earlier in the season when he wasn't cutting it loose, we're like, throw the ball, man. Drive the football.
Yeah.
Now he's doing it, but they're still not scoring enough. It's kind of interesting. And then, of course, you have now a guy that they know, Vic Fangio, very, very well. I'm so interested to see what their attack is.
And I'm going to say this, and I think Hurts is walking a little bit of a fine line now between that balance between being patient and leaving prematurely. And it's always easy to say, oh, I understand when a guy leaves prematurely, when there's pressure, okay? Because what happens is quarterbacks start to anticipate it and expect it. And that's probably a normal human nature reaction. But at some point, if it's not really pressure by NFL standards, you got to stay there and you got to let the play happen.
Sure.
And he's walking a little bit of a fine line, which is, I think, one difference between this year and last year, particularly down the stretch when he was playing really, really good football. Now, of course, he can also do that and then run for 12 yards on a 3rd and 9, and we know he can do that.
Right.
So it's a tough call, and I think as a quarterback, you've got to kind of figure that out. You can't coach that per se. You've kind of got to figure that out.
Yes, definitely. All right, we have more major matchups from the Eagles offense against the Dolphins to talk about. First, we're going to hear a word from our friends at Sky Motor Cars, including the voice of the Eagles. That's Mr. Merrill Reese.
Sky Motor Cars in Westchester is a different sort of dealership. All it takes is one look at their Highline pre-owned vehicles that people over the country want and need. Owner Brett Schiller, make sure you don't spend a dime of your money before you purchase the car. Sky Motor Cars allows you to make all the decisions regarding your next vehicle. At Sky Motor Cars, you never have to spend more than necessary. Visit SkyMotorCars.com today or call 610-918-7225.
All right, welcome back to Inside the Birds Pregame Live. Geoff Mosher, Adam Caplan, Jason Avant, Greg Cosell here at 140 North Columbus Ave on the Delaware waterfront at Fringe Bar. And man, it's starting to get busy in here. People coming in, waiting to watch that game on the, I don't know how big that screen measures at, but it felt like 2 stories because you have 250 seats in a stadium style, like the way the movie theaters are now. So it's going to be a blast watching that. And obviously the Eagles fans are going to be crazy with the Kelly Green atmosphere tonight. We're talking about the Eagles offense right now and how it matches up. They just had a very, very difficult time against a good Jets defense. The Miami defense, it sounds like you're saying, has some good components to it. Certainly have some good pass rushers. But Greg, would you put this in the class of the Jets defensive front?
Not overall, but they do have good players, and they do have speed at backer with Long and Baker, and certainly Phillips and Chubb can get cranked up as edge pass rushers, and they do move those guys around when they get to 3rd down. Those guys will line up in different spots other than on the edge. Wilkins is a good player inside. He's a guy who can win one-on-one. So they do have good players.
How about my guy Van Ginkel?
You know, he's an
43.
interesting guy.
Mr. Wisconsin?
Because they play him inside and outside, correct?
Well, he plays on the ball at times, on the edge, and then he'll also play stack backer.
There you go.
So he's an interesting guy. So, yeah, they do have good players. I don't think they played as well this year as a lot of people probably expected as a unit, given that it's Vic Fangio.
Right.
So, because I think they do have areas you can attack. But, you know, Javon Holland's a really good back-end safety. I mean, he's a really good player. So they have good individual players. I don't think the units come together yet. Would you agree with that?
No, I agree totally. There's definitely gaps to throw. There's windows to throw the ball in this. They don't cover the flats extremely well, especially to the side that the safety is coming down toward, because he's so deep that if you want to, you can get 4 and 5 yards as much as you like out there if you're willing to take it. It's just that they play so deep that it's hard to get behind them. You know, but there's definitely passing lanes, and like we said, there's some teams that have some success running the ball. So the Eagles have some very good matchups. You have Eli Apple out there on the outside, but let's say this: last week they allowed Tay Hayes to live, and they allowed Craig James. I can't remember his name.
Craig James.
From us, from Eagles. Yeah, that we allowed those two guys to live. You know,
Correct.
so it's more so about what the offensive line is doing up front in order to provide the protection, and also our guys got to come up to play. Just think about this scenario last game. We have the ball ready to go up 17-3 or 21-3 before half. Swift fumbles the ball. That ends that possession. We get no points. The next drive, right after halftime, first down, Devontae Smith drops a huge catch and run, right?
Right in the middle of the field.
Middle of the field, right? Stalls that drive, they get sacked the next play. That's what normally happens. Big play, right? The drive right after that, Kenny Gainwell drops a 3rd and 7.
Yep.
Right? So you look at the middle 8 minutes of the ball game, the Eagles basically lose the game in succession there. So what I'm saying is that it's not always on the offensive line or Jalen Hurts. The supporting cast have to come up and play, especially Devontae Smith in a situation like that where we can clearly see that there was frustration last game about the number of targets that he got. This past game, he got 11 targets.
Yeah.
11. I don't know if I had 11 targets in the season some years.
You did. Remember it was against New England,
right.
like your 5th year. We brought it up on the show.
But I'm saying though, it's one of those things. If you put it out there or show any type of frustration, we're going to take it that, man, you're going to come and show up.
Right,
AJ Brown did, and he balled.
Right.
That's what you have to do. You got to ball. So those guys got to come up and support as well. It's not just Jalen Hurts lifting the team or the offensive line lifting the team. When you have an opportunity as a receiver, tight end, whoever it is, to make a play, you got to make a play.
This is where I re-bring up the fact that despite people tend to remember what happened last, right? So 4 turnovers, the drop passes, but through 6 weeks, the Eagles are number 2 in total offensive yards. Number 5 in points scored. Number 1 in 3rd down. We talk about how important 3rd down and situational football is to offense. Well, they're number 1 in 3rd down. The only area where they really have not been up to task is red zone, where they're in the 20s. And
they've had a couple of really well-schemed plays the last couple of weeks.
Yeah.
But you know what's interesting?
In the red zone, you're saying? Yeah, because they were 2 of 3 last week.
Yeah, I thought the Goddard touchdown 2 weeks ago and the Swift touchdown this week were really well-designed, well-schemed plays that attacked and broke down the defense.
Right. So if we're assuming Lane Johnson comes back and is Lane Johnson, the Eagles should have plenty of opportunities to get the ball in their playmakers, too, in their hands and score some points against this defense, which goes to your theory that maybe they come out throwing a little bit more.
I think they can. You know what's interesting, just as a quick aside, you talked about their 3rd down offense. They're not very good on 3rd down defense this year, which is, very surprising. I mean, in some ways surprising.
Talking about the Eagles,
given their pass rush. But anyway, I just thought of that when you talked about their 3rd down offense.
Yeah, especially with the pass rush that they've been able to get.
Oh, they're well in the bottom half of the league in 3rd down defense.
Is that maybe probably an outlier or?
After seven games tonight, I think that's a pretty good sample size.
Let me put it this way. I remember the Vikings converted a lot, but they were down 27-7.
Right.
And the Eagles sort of were like, all right, we got this game. And then they let Kirk Cousins do his thing a little bit. So I don't know how much.
Well, they were terrible on 3rd down against Sam Howell, by the way.
They were. But some of that was Sam's second reaction.
Some, not all.
Not all.
But anyway, that's
a good point.
But the point is, the Eagles can I agree with Jay that I think the Eagles' general approach this year has been much more of a sustaining type feel to their offense. You know, Brian Johnson clearly has a commitment to running the ball, and certainly if it's working early, he'll stay with it. But I just think Sirianni, I really believe that he's the way he thinks, and he's a really aggressive guy. You know, I just think he's going to feel like, you know what, we can put up points tonight, and we're going to attack.
So you think this is going to be one of those who's, for lack of better terms, balls is bigger type of game? I see your offense,
Maybe.
and I'm going to raise you.
I'm going to raise you?
Yeah,
Bam.
I could be totally wrong. I'm just, I just don't. Yeah, look. If the Eagles come out and they run, and Swift's gaining 7, 8, 9 yards on his first 4, 5, 6 carries, obviously they're going to keep running the ball.
Right. Yeah.
But I'm talking philosophically.
Right. All right. Well, here's another Kelly Green stat for you guys that pertains to the offense. A.J. Brown is the NFL's second leading receiver. We talked all about Tyreek Hill. Well, A.J. Brown in any other normal year might be the number one receiver in the league. He's averaging 112 yards per game. He's had 4 straight games of at least 120 receiving yards. That is a new franchise record broken by the guy we mentioned earlier in the show, Mike Quick, who had 3 straight 120-yard games back in 83 or 80, I think 87. So we've been used to this offense, though, being a little bit more spread around last year. This year, Jay, you're seeing A.J. Brown featured a whole lot. And so I have a 2-part question. One, we know that Devontae Smith is nursing a hamstring injury. And I do wonder, not to make excuses, but as a wide receiver, when you are dealing with a lower leg injury or a hamstring injury, does that contribute to maybe having uncharacteristic drops or just not having your head in? He had some bad blocks last week or week ago. Do you think he's kind of laboring out there?
No, I just think that receiver is one of those positions that the reason we get the term diva is that you have to have extremely high confidence in order to play the position. And if that confidence is shaken at any moment, it will lead to a repetitive drop situation where you're just battling demons in your head. So that's why you have these guys that have ultra high egos and extremely confident personalities, is because you have to have it in order to be successful.
Right.
And whenever you allow one play to affect another play, it just goes on and on. I just think that, Devontae Smith in that particular game, not any other game, in that particular game was just battling demons. And that's the gist of it. And it happens to every great one. Terrell Owens had a game where he dropped, 6 passes?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
In a playoff game?
Yeah.
I don't know if I dropped 6 passes in my career, but it happens. I have. But,
I know why you said that. You know T.O. watches everything, right?
I definitely have. I have most of
You
them.
didn't want to get a call from T.O. later today. Hey, Jason, I heard what you said about me.
Man, you should wear the 81 proudly, man.
I say this, I'm definitely not fighting them.
And not in sandals, by the way,
Let me be Geoff Mosher here.
or shower slippers.
Ask you a question.
Okay.
Because I'm fascinated by this. Do you think that a pass game, because I see this with other teams too. I'm fortunate enough to do One Bills Live, and I have this conversation about Stephon Diggs a lot with them. Do you think a pass game can be sustainable over the course of a whole season with such a strong focus on one player?
Historically, it's never worked for Super Bowl caliber teams. Usually the guy that leads the league in receiving, and it's just Justin Jefferson, Devontae Adams, Calvin Johnson. You look at the guy that's everyone's top fantasy pick, that team is usually not winning playoff games.
Right.
Yep.
They're just not. It's the teams that spread the ball around that's judicial. And so, yes, here's the thing. I said this on a few shows this week, I think that the pecking order has to be clearly defined in order for a team to have comfort and also to understand roles when it comes to the passing game. You have to establish that as a quarterback. You have to establish that as an offensive coordinator, head coach. The pecking order on our team should go like this each and every week. It should go number 1 in targets, A.J. Brown. It should go number 2 in targets, Devontae Smith. Number 3 in targets, Dallas Goedert. It should go that way the entire game for the rest of the season, and everybody else after that is situational football.
Right.
If it's a third down, I may target you based on the scenario. If it's red zone, we just picked up Julio. He's a big body. I may target him there, even though he doesn't have a great history in the red zone. Right. So whatever your situation that you put, that's everyone else. But you want to target those guys. And I understand why I'm talking a lot here.
No,
this is good
That's
stuff.
why I want to ask the question, because I get asked this a lot myself, and I didn't play like you did, so I just always wonder, can you play like that over the course of a whole season?
Well, resentment builds in.
Well, that's the thing. Yeah.
Resentment builds in. Remember, these are humans that are playing. The game. Right. So if one person is getting all the attention all the time, the other people that are in the group are going to get frustrated at some point.
Right.
That's how it is, and so you have to be able to delegate and to spread out the responsibility in order for the team to have cohesiveness. That's just it.
That's a fascinating segue, Jason, to our next topic here as we wrap things up. The Eagles had some depth issues at wide receiver, Quez Watkins IR. They work out Desmond Patton, they work out Marquez Callaway, and then they signed Julio Jones, a first ballot Hall of Famer. Obviously a guy who has a whole lot of clout to his name. And he comes in, and Adam and I say, hey, look, they needed a fourth receiver. He has not been the number one receiver on his team the last few years. He's been there to help. But then he goes in the locker room and says, make no mistake, don't get it twisted, I'm here to dominate. So
Julio said that?
He said that in the locker room.
Well, you got to hear the first thing that he said, though, Greg, because the last part, the first part was that I would do whatever they asked me to do, but don't get it twisted. I'm here to dominate.
Yeah.
And so he did preface it with the first part first.
But he added the second part.
He didn't have to.
He didn't have to do that.
He didn't have to.
I mean, I remember doing pieces on the matchup show on Julio for years and years. He was phenomenal.
Yeah. I mean, he had an 1,800-yard receiving.
Phenomenal.
Yeah.
I mean, for 6'3", 220, who could run like that.
He can stop and start pretty good for a big guy.
Yeah. I mean, he used to just run away from people on crossers and overs. I mean, and 6'3", 220. I mean, we're not talking about a small guy.
Right.
He was phenomenal, but when was the last time he dominated?
Well, that's a great question. Adam, what's the league view on A.J. Brown? I mean, on Julio Jones at this point?
Yeah, so with the Titans, it just didn't work. He came in there, and ironically, you talk about A.J. Brown, right? So he came in there because they got him from Atlanta. They gave up compensation, and he thought he was going to be the man there. He was not the man. And he kind of just was hurt a lot, and there were questions about how competitive he was going to be. It just didn't work. It was an absolute disaster. And then he goes to Tampa, and he still could play with Tampa. He just unfortunately kept getting hurt. So when he turns 34, I think actually this coming week, and you do wonder, does he have anything left? Now the Eagles think he does because he's going to play tonight. And there'll probably be a package of plays for him. You talked about red zone where they've not done well. I know he's not been a guy who's scored a lot of touchdowns, but he is 6'2" and 3/4.
Yeah.
And Miami's not real deep a corner. So this is where it could come in when they spread him out.
Jay, going back to he has not been a very productive receiver the last 3 years for what he used to be, right? He's here as the number 4
Well, he was
wide
the best receiver in the league for a number of years.
Of course.
Right.
So that's where I'm asking you to do something impossible, and that's put yourself in Julio Jones's mindset. You are here with the Eagles, a really good team, sort of doing what you tried to do last year with the Bucs, help them out. But this is a different case. The offense has been pretty good. Can he come in here and just be a situational guy and everybody's cool with that and it works out? I mean, that seems idealistic.
I don't understand the signing. Just to be honest, I don't understand the signing. I think that you have enough chefs in the kitchen. Mm-hmm. You have 3 guys that are elite at their position group, right? And you don't have enough footballs to delegate to everyone. You just don't. So let's just focus on what we have in-house and get that straight. You haven't given Lamide Zaccheaus an opportunity. When he did get an opportunity, he played well. Mm-hmm. What the hell is Covey on the roster for?
To return punts.
That's it.
Yeah.
That's it.
Yeah, I don't agree with that. I'm not a Julio hater because I'm not. I respect I respect what he's done in this game. I just don't know that the 2023 Eagles need Julio Jones. I just don't think that that's a problem area that they need. Now, if he comes out and balls, then so be it. But here's the problem when you're Julio Jones. It's not that you can't play anymore. Mm-hmm. It's that you get old, and you get old go despite the way you feel about it.
The body changes the mentality.
And he's been banged up. I mean, he's had a lot of injuries.
You're productive and you can run routes and you can do everything that the young guys do when you train. But your body breaks down, and that's what happens. That you're constantly trying to get that high again. Like that's it.
Well, give me, Greg, the tape review of Julio Jones with Tampa, and then before that with Tennessee.
I wish I could specifically remember, to be honest, but he was not a factor. I mean, and I thought that he just didn't look the same, because I mentioned, going back when he was with Atlanta in his prime, which I guess wasn't theoretically that long ago. He's
4 years ago.
He's only 34. I mean, it's not like he's 38.
Right.
But, I mean, this guy was ridiculously good.
Right.
I mean, I'm sure everybody remembers that catch he made in the Super Bowl on the sideline, which was just absurd.
Yeah.
And Jay's right. He wasn't just a fast guy, but he could run for that size. Because I remember plays where he was in the slot and he would run these deep overs or deep crossers, and guys just couldn't run with him at all. And when you'd see how big he was for that size.
Right.
But I just remember those last couple of years, he just didn't seem like he was much of a factor. And Tennessee's a team that I've also been fortunate enough to do radio in Nashville, and he was not a factor at all, really.
No, in fact, they really had high hopes for him that he'd be a compliment to A.J. Brown. It just never worked. And he had a lot of lower body injuries. It really started his last couple of years with Atlanta. And I was really surprised what Tennessee gave up to get him. And then he goes to Tampa. I was with them, the Bucs, for 2 days in training camp in 22. I'm like, wow, he could still actually move. He had some good games for Tampa, but then the lower body, hamstring, ankle, knee, and he looked finished. And I was kind of surprised that not just the Eagles signed him, but because the Eagles have literally no depth at receiver. Yeah. What if A.J. Brown gets hurt?
Well, I agree with that. And then also, they don't really have a natural slot wide receiver. I thought that would have been the direction they went to. Zacchaeus has been doing a nice job. He has played slot and outside in his career, but they don't have someone like Jason Avant, who, I am a slot receiver. This is my craft. I'm really good at it. I thought the Eagles might look on the street for that, being that Quez Watkins
Where's Greg Ward when
was
you
out.
On the practice squad.
He is on the practice squad.
The best slot receiver they have is Devontae Smith.
Right.
Yes.
And just because you're a guy that is a number 1A, 1B, whatever you call it, doesn't mean that he can't be the number one target on third downs.
Sure.
In the slot. There's a lot of teams that have done it for years.
Yeah.
So,
Wes Welker.
Yeah.
Right.
And that brings up an interesting point. Hey, you say, okay, what can we do to get Devontae Smith back in the slot to get him more targets?
Maybe.
Is Julio Jones
Maybe that's what they see. Maybe that's what they see it at.
Maybe it is.
Maybe Smith moves inside more, and they feel like Julio. I mean, he's not going to play 65 snaps because his body probably can't handle that.
No.
He's coming off the couch.
Yeah.
So
15 plus snaps.
Right. But I mean, maybe he'll line up outside.
Yeah.
Well, now that actually makes sense.
Yeah.
So the other way did not make sense for me at all. Right? Just bringing him in and Devontae staying outside.
Right.
But when you really think about it, they don't have any replacements outside, and that kind of makes sense.
Yeah.
So there was no overreaction about it.
They're an interesting team. They're a really good team, and they're 5-1, and we'll see what happens tonight. But they don't have depth in really certain key areas.
Not like last year.
No wide receivers, no safeties.
Right.
Nickel. I mean, they've got some key areas where they don't really have a lot of depth.
They paid the quarterback. We're on the clock, baby.
Well, they were in the Super Bowl last year.
7 new starters.
They didn't lose because of the quarterback.
I mean, they had a little bit of money. They could have brought Marcus Epps back.
When you pay them, you know how it is. It's only so much money to go around.
The linebackers and safeties, they didn't make that much money on the free agent. We're talking about CJ and Marcus Epps and TJ Edwards and Kaiser White. But we know where the positional value is.
But the team, the Eagles will stay relevant because they spend the money in the right spot.
Yes. They do.
Offensive, defensive line, corners, receivers, and everybody else that's not a corner receiver, offensive line, defensive
That's why last week was so interesting, because the one thing you could always say about the Eagles, and I think we all agree, and then you said that even Flip talked about this, was you never see their offensive line get handled.
No, he was very surprised.
You can count on their O-line and their D-line to be the better unit literally every week, no matter who they're playing.
And on that, he just kept pointing out he could not believe how much Jermaine Johnson showed up against
Jordan Mailata.
Yeah, he was shocked at how much he dominated.
Yeah.
We don't see that, guys.
No.
Huff played well.
I mean, Driscoll you could
Bryce
accept,
Huff, yeah.
but Mailata really struggled last week.
Yes, and I think a couple of times this year we said, wow, this guy gave him trouble.
Yeah,
So.
but I mean, that's always been, not always the last number of years, their saving grace is that, hey, let's say Hurts isn't great. Let's say they didn't have a great running day for whatever reason. You could still count on their O-line and D-line to be there.
All right, inactives. We'll go to the Dolphins. Robbie Anderson-Chosen is inactive.
Robbie Chosen.
Yeah, he's inactive tonight. Former Temple University.
He wasn't chosen tonight?
How soon is he going to be?
Oh, wow, this is
ahead.
huge. Wow, this is shocking because they didn't add anyone. Xavier Howard is out.
He's out.
Yes.
Xavier Howard
Wow.
is inactive.
So that means
That changes my.
Oh, my goodness gracious. That changes everything. Okay,
that makes my pick pretty good.
Connor
Yes, it
Williams,
does.
their center, is out.
I'm changing.
Connor Williams,
How about
center,
this?
out.
They did not add a corner off their practice squad.
So wait
They
a
thought he was
second. So
playing.
wait, who's...
So Liam Eichenberg is going to start at center for
Again,
them.
right? Which he did last week.
which he's been doing.
Right?
Do me a favor. Just pull up their depth chart.
Cam Smith, the
the rookie from South Carolina.
Yep.
Yeah.
Your guy Eli Apple. They
I
don't
don't like Cam Smith, but he's a rookie.
They clearly don't like Kelvin Joseph. Even with that injury, he's not even active tonight.
Okay.
And Kader Kohu.
So Cam Smith.
He's probably going to have to start. And a guy is generally a special teamer.
Cam Smith's going to play in their nickel.
He should,
They'll
okay.
start Kohu and Apple in their base.
All right, we need an
Wow.
official ruling now from our awesome production team
I got to change my pick, too.
of James and Zach. And I have not mentioned yet
I'm changing my
that
pick.
James and
I
Zach.
don't need to change
I'm
mine because I'm
changing
ahead of the curve here.
You're good. You're good. We'll see.
I don't need to
let me-
change
I'll
mine.
get the thumbs up or thumbs down,
I
right?
went through multiple
Wow,
games trying to
it's a
convince
stunner.
myself why I should.
You guys spent way too much time on it.
I told Jeff, here's my pick. I have no idea why I'm picking it, but here it is.
All right, listen, James and Zach, they are behind the wheels as usual. And again, bringing Inside the Birds pregame live to you in high definition, great graphics, great videos, and more. We want to thank them always for all their behind the scenes work. And it seems like Jason is asking them to work overtime and switch his score prediction and player prediction. Can that be done? I don't know. I'm
just
getting
reverse.
Nah, I'm getting the look. You got to stick with it, brother.
Just reverse it.
You got to stick with the score.
Reverse the
Eagles
team.
will do
Change-
Eagles.
The score stays the same. Reverse the team.
That means he worked pregame and he couldn't go.
Wow, that's a
Will
stunner.
Jason Avant be allowed to switch his pick?
Might be 70-50.
I don't know. I think he's got to stick with it.
All right, so Eagles inactive. Tanner McKee is always inactive third quarterback. Rashad Penny, Reed Blankenship, Bradley Roby, Patrick Johnson, Moro Jomo,
Moro Jomo. Okay.
Albert O. They cannot get him anything. Can't get in the game.
All right, so Reed Blankenship and Rashad Penny once again down for the Philadelphia Eagles and Bradley Roby. We talked about that. Very interesting. Now, Jason's been given the thumbs up. He's going to change his pick tonight in the game and perhaps his player of the game, too. So why don't we get to that? Eagles, of course, are favored by... Well, before we do that,
stunner.
let me just tell everybody about our friends at PHLSportsNation.com. They're enhancing the fans' experience with their coverage of all Philadelphia sports teams. For the fan, by the fan is their motto. So make sure you check them out at PHLSportsNation.com and on Twitter at PHL Sports Nation. So first, we're going to start with our player of the game. We'll see if Jason picks a new one there. Greg, I will start with you. Who's your player of the game tonight?
I'm picking Jalen Hurts.
And you're sticking with that, right?
Oh,
Just
is that
for
who he
us,
had
yeah.
it? Oh, okay.
He had
Okay,
that.
okay.
He had that.
Okay.
He had Jalen Hurts.
I think he's going to respond really well. And I just, like I said, I think they're going to be aggressive. Certainly, not every play, but I think they're going to be aggressive. Now, with what we've learned with the inactives, I feel even better about it.
Yes.
There you
Because I
go.
think they really have matchup advantages on the perimeter. And I think they're going to attack, and I think they're going to score. So
right.
I'm picking Jalen Hurts.
Which was Greg's original
pick.
Just to let everybody know
Oh,
who's changing it
come on,
last
yeah.
minute.
Hey,
Are you
wow.
sticking with your
I'm an
original?
OG.
No.
I'm an OG,
Well, okay. Now, hang on. I'm gonna still pick my player of the game.
Okay.
I'm gonna still stick with Tyreek Hill.
All right.
I'm gonna stick with that.
So Adam says Tyreek Hill has a big, what do you think, like 150, 180?
He had 3 for 181 or something when he was with the Chiefs.
He's thinking 9 for 250.
He tormented them 2 years ago. It was unbelievable.
By what half will he have 250?
Who holds the record for most receiving yards in a game?
Kevin Curtis. Did Kevin Curtis?
Oh, that's for an Eagle, not
Yeah,
not
I know.
all
I'm
time.
joking.
I don't
Did he have
know.
like 230?
Flipper
Flipper Anderson, Stephon Page, one of those
I
guys?
believe it is that.
Stephon Page, really? really?
Wow. Had somebody in a modern era to
Well, they were modern era guys.
Technically.
Remember, Greg's modern era is more expensive than ours.
modern era, 1960.
I'm a little older than you.
No, not as far as you know.
All right, Tyreek Hill for Adam. Jason, who's your player of the game this minute?
What do you have on the screen there? Oh yeah. So originally listen. I have to break this down here.
Okay.
I literally looked at multiple games trying to pick the Eagles, but I couldn't see an avenue based on what we were losing with Reed Blankenship.
Which you're still losing,
Roby.
by the way. They're not walking through the door.
Xavier Howard not playing, and also the center not playing is a big deal.
Yeah.
So I'm changing my pick.
Okay.
But I still think Tua is going to have a great game. So since it doesn't change on the screen, I got to stay with Tua.
All right.
I'm staying with Tua.
Tua, and I still think, by what your rationale is, Tua should still have a pretty good game. Because Eichenberg has been filling in for Connor Williams before. This ain't his
And
first
the ball
rodeo.
gets out.
Yeah. All right. So my pick is going to remain the same. I believe this will be an underneath type game for Jalen Hurts, even though that Xavier Howard's out. I see DeAndre Swift, getting back to being a good runner, inside zone.
Well, he's never become a bad runner.
No, getting back to being a more productive
okay.
in this offense. So I think he's going to have close to a 100-yard rushing game, if not more, and maybe 5 or 6 catches for in the 40 to 50 yard. I could see like 150 yards overall.
He had a bunch last
for
week.
DeAndre
Yeah, I'd like to
Swift.
see it downfield more.
Yeah, he will be my player of the game for the Eagles. All right, our predictions, our picks. Jason, I'll start with you. You are 5-1. What is your prediction now?
I was picking the Dolphins, but I'm taking the Eagles now.
All right, what is it?
33-27 Eagles.
33-27 Philadelphia Eagles. Boy, that's a popular kind of score-ish. All right, Craig, what do you got?
I picked Eagles 37, Dolphins 34.
You did.
And I'm sticking by it.
You're sticking by it. All right, you're 5-1. You're sticking with the Eagles to win. Adam, who wins tonight?
Well, now with Xavier and Howard out, I'm changing my pick. I was going to pick the Dolphins. That's killer. I'm looking at their group.
You guys are such weenies.
Well, yeah, but I want to get it right. Yeah. Is that an old school term? Literally the old school? I'm going to go with the Eagles now. The Eagles 34, the Dolphins 30.
All right.
Yeah, you and Jeff are the real.
Let the record show that Greg Cosell and Geoff Mosher never wavered.
Never wavered.
My pick stays the same, folks. I'm picking the Eagles to win in a lower scoring game than some of us may think. Eagles 27, Dolphins 23.
I almost thought about that because there's been a lot of these games over the years that you think are going to be really high scoring.
Sure.
And they just don't turn out that way.
Well, that's sort of my philosophy.
Scoring's
now.
down this year again.
I pick what I think is going to happen, Greg, and then I just decide to pick the opposite.
Yeah, I did the same thing.
The
I just said,
Costanza theory, yes.
Absolutely. Listen, we've had a great time here at Fringe Bar, 140 North Columbus Ave on the Delaware waterfront. They have been unbelievable hosts. Their food is great. Their drink specials are great. I can barely hear myself as the people file in to get ready for the Eagles game. Again, 250 seats, stadium style, an enormous screen. People are jam-packing this place to watch the game later tonight. So we thank our friends at Fringe Bar, along with our friends at Ocean Casino Resort, My Bookie, Sky Motor Cars, PHL Sports Nation, our production team of James and Zach, who had to change up everything
All right.
on the
Great job.
fly
Great job.
in the
Great job,
last
guys.
5 minutes. They did great. Make sure you're checking out our coverage of the game afterward on insidethebirds.com. And of course, Inside the Birds post-game live, myself, Adam Caplan, and former Eagles tight end Clay Harbor. And if you got some time, I'll be at Hard Rock Cafe pretty soon doing a little Eagles watch party myself there in downtown Philly. So I'll see you there if you show up. And again, thanks for watching. Enjoy the game. It's going to be a great one. Kelly Green is back. Have fun. And there you have it. All right, thanks for watching Inside the Birds pregame live for Geoff Mosher and Adam Caplan, Greg Cosell, Jason Avant. Enjoy the game, everybody.